What is it? What is it?
It's not gonna happen, but we don't know.
Well, I know what it is.
Thank you for that question.
Whatever you want.
I know, yes, we want housing and
Meaning.
just a little bit of housing.
Is the head of.
Everywhere.
Just a little bit everywhere.
I'm the oldest of the.
No racial impact studies, oh no, they couldn't do that. Even though it is the law. But why did DCP ever follow the law?
My relatives really believe it.
They're above the law.
Are they?
I think
I
that is
think
above.
yes.
I think it's above the law.
They are.
Literally, the white area.
Just a little bit all over the place. A million new apartments, and they call that a little bit.
There is literally no house.
He did his job.
Actually, they should wait since 1959.
And they are, you can't see them.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Community Board 9 public hearing on the City of Yes for Housing Opportunity Text Amendment. We have with us here the Department of City Planning to present on the new citywide zoning text amendment. So thank you all very much for coming. And afterwards, I'll let you introduce yourselves. We have a subcommittee at Community Board 9 that has been reviewing these text amendments. And I'll just briefly introduce ourselves. I'm Sue-Ann Cheong. I'm the chair of the Land Use Committee. And we have Nicola Cox, who's a subcommittee member, Tom Thomas, who's a subcommittee member, Esteban Caron, who's a subcommittee member. And let me see if we have anyone else. We do have a couple of board members, Teresa Westerdahl, Ethan Norville, and John Wolfling until recently.
John Wolfling is no longer on the board.
That's correct, Alicia.
He just like the rest of us peasants.
And so without further ado, let's get started. And just to let you guys know, after the Department of City Planning gives their presentation, the subcommittee will give a short presentation about Community Board 9 specific demographics and zones, and then we'll open the floor for public questions. And if you do have questions already, if you can sign up on the sign-in sheet there, and we'll call people in the order that they're signed up. So please do sign up if you would like to ask a question or make a comment. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jordan Prod. I'm a senior borough planner at the New York Department of City Planning. And I'm the department's liaison to community boards 8 and 9. I'm joined tonight by my colleagues Catherine Nessel, who's also in the Brooklyn office, and John Mangan, who is in the housing division. We are excited for you to hear about City of Yes for Housing Opportunity, the citywide text amendment that will change zoning to allow for more equitable housing development. These changes will enable a little more housing in every neighborhood by removing barriers to housing growth. City of Yes for Housing Opportunity is a citywide plan that will encourage incremental housing growth over a wide geography. In a bit, I will explain how you can expect this proposal to apply to your neighborhood, but first I will talk about the proposal more broadly. New York City faces a severe housing shortage. The vacancy rate for rental apartments is historically low, only 1.4%, far below a healthy vacancy rate that would provide New Yorkers with housing options. In Brooklyn, the vacancy rate is only 1.27%. Only half of New York City, over half of New York City renters are rent burdened, meaning they spend over 30% of their monthly income on rent. In Brooklyn, that's 52.6% of renters. Each night of 2023, over 92,000 homeless New Yorkers slept in shelters. This includes over 33,000 homeless children. And beyond the statistics you see here, all of us know families and friends who have simply left the city or state entirely because they can no longer afford the cost of housing. I know them, you know them, everyone knows it's happening. New Yorkers are experiencing very high housing costs for many reasons. But one of them is that for several decades, we haven't built enough homes to keep up with job or population growth. Most of New York's housing was created in the first half of the 20th century. Since that time, housing production has fallen dramatically. And that's in part because of zoning that has become increasingly restrictive since 1961. While housing production has decreased, the demand for housing has increased. More people live here than ever before, and households are smaller today than they used to be, meaning even the same amount of people take up more space. What recent housing production has occurred has been limited to only a few neighborhoods. In 2023, 10 community districts produced as much housing as the other 49 combined. When some neighborhoods stop producing housing, that puts additional pressure on the other neighborhoods to produce more and more new housing. The proposals in City of Yes for Housing Opportunity emerged from the goals outlined in Where We Live NYC, the city's fair housing plan. Where We Live NYC was created by the Department of Housing Preservation and Development, or HPD, in collaboration with over 250 community organizations. It highlights how the city's housing shortage and an affordability crisis have severely limited New Yorkers' housing choices. In a tight housing market, landlords can charge high rents and existing tenants are vulnerable to harassment, poor housing quality, and displacement pressure as they compete for a limited number of units. The average New York City renter household makes about $70,000 a year. The average two-bedroom apartment in New York City is over $2,700. That means that your average working family would have to spend about half their income on rent to get an average-priced home for their family. Many city agencies work on policies and programs that aim to address New Yorkers' housing needs, and the Department of City Planning is responsible for the city's zoning. Zoning regulates what can be built on a particular site, both how big the building can be and what uses it can have, residential, commercial, manufacturing, and so on. Sometimes zoning includes other things like requirements for income-restricted affordable housing, but zoning does not fund new housing or directly control what will be built. It only establishes rules for what may be built. How much housing gets built depends on many factors. Other tools the city uses to support good housing outcomes include subsidies or tax incentives to promote income-restricted affordable housing, programs for affordable home ownership, and tenant protections that guarantee New Yorkers' rights. Over the last year, DCP has met with over 100 groups, including housing nonprofits, tenants' rights groups, faith-based organizations, and affordable housing providers. Each of these groups was able to share a unique and valuable perspective on the lived experiences resulting from our housing crisis. If each neighborhood adds a little more housing, New York City can add a lot more housing overall without any single neighborhood experiencing dramatic changes or overtaxed infrastructure. Neighborhoods that have seen a lot of housing growth concentrated in a small number of big developments can have that growth spread out across a wider area. And neighborhoods that have opted out of addressing our housing crisis can do their part to add the homes New Yorkers need. This text amendment is the biggest pro-housing change DCP has ever undertaken and would touch the zoning for every single part of the city. The Universal Affordability Preference, or UAP, would allow bigger buildings for affordable housing in every medium and high-density zoning district. Across the city, the proposal would remove residential parking mandates, which are making housing more expensive. The proposal would also add more missing middle housing or low-rise apartment buildings in our low-density areas. The proposal aims to help homeowners in low-density areas by allowing them to add accessory dwelling units, or ADUs, to their homes, and providing small buildings with additional flexibility to adapt over time. There are also a range of smaller proposals, including enabling conversion of non-residential buildings, allowing more small and shared apartments, and allowing for residential campuses to add height-limited buildings. This is a map of Community District 9, medium and high-density districts in orange, low-density districts in, I'm sorry, is that blue or purple? I'm colorblind. Blue, thank you. Yes, low-density districts in blue, that's R1 through R5, medium and high-density in orange. All right, we are first going to turn our attention to the medium and high-density areas of New York City, which includes most of this community district. Our focus here is on creating more opportunities for housing, including affordable housing. To do this, the proposal introduces the Universal Affordability Preference, or UAP. It would allow apartment buildings to be at least 20% larger, so long as all the extra space is occupied by permanently affordable or supportive housing. UAP is modeled after current rules that allow bigger buildings for affordable senior housing in some neighborhoods. UAP would allow incremental housing growth in neighborhoods and encourage affordable housing throughout the city, rather than concentrating it in a few neighborhoods. This slide, this map shows which districts have an existing senior housing preference today, which is shown in light orange. Through the UAP framework, all forms of affordable and supportive housing would be able to take advantage of the higher FARs already provided to affordable senior housing in these districts. In some districts, including several in Community District 9, the bonus for this affordable senior housing is more than 20%, and UAP would simply apply this existing bonus to all forms of affordable housing. There are a few districts that don't have the senior housing preference today, although Community District 9 does not have any of these zoning districts. In these areas, the proposal would create new FARs to enable the growth of affordable and supportive housing. There would be limited height increases where it is necessary to make enough room for these affordable homes. Many of you are probably wondering how UAP will define affordability. I'm not kidding, everyone's wondering how UAP will define affordability. UAP would have an affordability requirement of 60% of area median income. Area median income, or AMI, is a measure of affordability established by the federal government. At 60% of AMI, or about $76,000 per family of three, UAP would serve lower income New Yorkers than the existing tool, voluntary inclusionary housing. Voluntary inclusionary housing is a Bloomberg-era program that is not mapped anywhere in Community District 9, but it requires apartments to be 80% of area median income. This would move that down to 60. Mandatory inclusionary housing, or MIH, which requires a percentage of new developments to be income-restricted affordable housing, will continue to exist and be mapped where there are significant increases in residential density. UAP would also serve New Yorkers at even lower income levels through income averaging. Income averaging means that instead of only including homes at the required affordability level, a building can include homes at a range of incomes that average to the required affordability. So, through the voluntary inclusionary housing program that we currently have, all homes created must be 80% of AMI. Under the income averaging plan in UAP, a building could meet UAP's 60% affordability level by including a mix of homes at 30% AMI, 60, and 90%, for example. Through UAP's deeper affordability requirement and the introduction of income averaging, UAP can help to serve the low-income New Yorkers who most need affordable housing. Here's one example of how UAP would work. If a church located in an R6 district wanted to build affordable housing today, they'd get 3.0 FAR, regardless of whether they're developing market rate or affordable housing. This would allow them to build about 35 units. Under UAP, they'd get 3.9 FAR, but the additional 0.9 FAR could only be used for permanent affordable housing. If it is, they could build about 10 to 12 more affordable units. 10 to 12 more affordable units may not seem like a lot, but this is functioning at a citywide scale. If every project has a few more affordable units, New York City can add a significant amount of affordable housing, and no single neighborhood will experience drastic changes. This is a rendering of how UAP would play out. Without UAP, the building is built according to the base FAR for market rate housing. The result is this 8-story apartment building. With UAP, the building can be about 20% bigger, which for this example translates into an additional 2 stories, so long as the extra space is permanently affordable housing. In our preliminary calculations, we determined that had UAP been in place since 2014, with tax incentives and public subsidies fully in support, an additional 20,000 income-restricted affordable homes could have been created to house 50,000 New Yorkers. Mandatory inclusionary housing, or MIH, would remain in place and continue to be mapped where there are significant increases in residential density. This proposal, however, would make several improvements to MIH. First, under this proposal, MIH option 3, previously known as the deep affordability option, could be applied as a standalone option. Today it has to be applied as an alternate with MIH options 1 or 2. This would allow future rezoning actions to ensure deep affordability. Some MIH FARs would be raised to meet UAP FARs. But for example, the zoning district R6A currently has an FAR of 3.6 when an MIH rezoning takes place. This would be raised to 3.9 to match UAP. The options would remain in place, meaning the same percentage of affordability will continue to be required. And finally, this proposal would exempt 100% affordable MIH projects from certain rules that prevent them from penciling out. This would streamline the production of 100% affordable housing and facilitate affordable home ownership. I would now like to shift to discuss the low-density proposals. Exclusionary zoning rules have made it virtually impossible to build new housing in many low-density neighborhoods, placing additional pressure on the high-density parts of the city to produce new housing. This wasn't always the case. Small apartment buildings and 2 to 3 family homes are common in all of New York City's lower-density neighborhoods, and were allowed in many places as recently as the 1990s and early 2000s when stricter zoning prevented them. For example, both the photos that you see here in this slide were taken in low-density zoning districts in Community District 9, and both photos show buildings that could not be built under current zoning. The photo on the left is Kingston Avenue between Union and President in an R4 district with a C13 overlay, and the photo on the right is on Midwood Street in an R2 district. City of Yes for Housing Opportunity would reintroduce modest buildings like these that are more naturally affordable than other types of construction into these districts. What you see here is a map of the low-density housing districts here in Community District 9. The darker blue is for lower density multifamily districts, and the lighter blue is one-family districts. The first low-density proposal is called Town Center. Our
Can
town
we
center.
go back, please?
So these are the low-density districts in Community District 9. Mostly R4 and R2, with a little bit of R5.
No, that's also R5 on,
Yeah, where the Kings County is.
and you classify that as a multifamily district?
Yes. Next slide. Our town center proposal aims to re-legalize mixed-use apartments or buildings with ground floor commercial use and a few stories of housing on top. This is a classic New York City building type that exists along many low-density commercial corridors. Town center zoning would apply in low-density residential districts with commercial overlays. In Community District 9, that means certain stretches of Rogers Avenue, Kingston Avenue, Utica Avenue, and a few other eastern portions of the district. Our second proposal for missing middle housing is transit-oriented development.
Excuse me, could you go back? Because I didn't understand that slide. You said what? What are you planning on doing there?
These are the areas where the town center zoning would be.
And what is the town
available.
center zoning that you're proposing?
It's allowing 2 to 4 stories of residential above an existing commercial ground floor.
We already have that.
Yeah, we have that.
We'll take.
Well, you want to add
we-
on
we
top
can-
of
we
that?
can- We can go into
Let's
more
say
details.
they can't build it now.
Yeah, let's-
Excuse me, I'm not talking to you.
We'll go into more details and
Please
take
don't-
questions
please
when the
don't interrupt me.
presentation's over.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, what? I didn't understand that slide. What were you proposing on that,
Can
the
we,
town
can we
center?
finish the presentation and we'll take your questions at the end?
Well, yeah, but I have other questions. I'm
That's
just,
fine, you can ask them all.
okay.
Um,
And please don't talk to me. I asked, can somebody just talk to him and tell him not to be
Can we
interrupted?
get on
Our
with the
next proposal
presentation?
is for transit-oriented development.
You gotta stop.
Transit-oriented development would allow for low-rise buildings of 3 to 5 stories on sites that are on a block within a half mile of a subway or rail station, more than 5,000 square feet, and located at the short end of the block or a wide street. Community facilities like faith-based organizations and libraries can also use these rules throughout the city on sites over 5,000 square feet. This map shows all of the low-density districts in Community District 9. The entire district is in the transit zone. However, not all the lots shown in purple would be eligible for the transit-oriented development program. In particular, a lot of these lots that you see highlighted here are small lots with row houses on them that are smaller than 5,000 square feet and aren't on the short end of a block or a wide street, so those sites would not be eligible for the transit-oriented development zoning tool. Larger corner lots of 5,000 square feet or more would be eligible.
And what's the increase in eligibility of that?
It varies, and we've got a slide at the end to show. In the rest of the low-density areas, the accessory dwelling unit, or ADU proposal, aims to give homeowners more flexibility. Under this proposal, a 1 or 2 family home would be allowed to add a small accessory dwelling unit, or ADU. There are a range of types of ADUs, including backyard cottages, garage conversions, and basement apartments. These small units would provide important housing options for small households, like a young person moving into their own place for the first time, or an elderly resident who wants to age in place. Because of their small size, they also serve different income levels than a large single-family home. The proposal includes rules to ensure that ADUs are safe. New basement ADUs would not be allowed in the coastal floodplain, and no ADUs would be allowed in special coastal risk districts, areas of our city with the most severe flood risk. The same rule changes that enable ADUs can also help homeowners who don't want to add an ADU, but need more flexibility to adapt or renovate their homes to meet their needs. Our research shows us that many existing buildings are out of compliance, meaning they're not in line with today's rules. For example, the R2 district that we have in Community District 9 south of Empire Boulevard contains row house buildings like the ones you see here, which are on Midwood Street. But these row houses could not be constructed today because they are taller, bulkier, and have narrower lots than what's currently allowed in the R2 district. These non-compliances can cause big headaches for homeowners if they need to borrow money from the bank or if they want to make simple changes to their home, like renovating a kitchen. This proposal would fix those rules. Finally, I'm going to present on our citywide parking proposals. This proposal would make parking optional for new housing everywhere, following the example of many other major cities. Today, New York City requires new housing to include off-street parking, even where it's not needed. These mandates mean less space for housing, increased construction costs, and less housing being built overall. The diagram here on the right-hand side represents how parking takes up a lot of physical space. 2 parking spaces is equivalent to the size of a studio apartment. Building parking itself is also very expensive and is an obstacle to housing growth, especially affordable housing. Parking, of course, will still be allowed, and we expect that developers will respond to market needs and continue to provide parking in areas where there is demand. This example shows how lifting parking mandates can support housing growth. For example, a developer sees an underutilized lot that's in a great location near transit, and they want to build an apartment building. The lot could accommodate 16 homes according to zoning, but the developer stops at 10 homes so that they can waive out of the parking requirements, because as soon as they add the 11th apartment, they would need to provide 6 parking spaces. By eliminating parking mandates, the developer can fully build out the lot to include those 6 additional apartments. And again, 6 additional apartments might not seem significant, but when hundreds of sites across the city are able to take advantage of this and build more housing, that incremental change results in a lot more housing across the city. There are a few more proposals that will provide more housing in a wider range of housing types. First, conversions. Today, outdated rules prevent underused non-residential buildings like offices from converting to housing. For example, many buildings that were constructed after 1961 or are located outside the city's largest office centers cannot be converted to housing. City of Yes for Housing Opportunity would make it easier for underused non-residential buildings, such as offices, to be converted to housing. The proposal would also allow small and shared apartments by eliminating the dwelling unit factor, a measure of the minimum average unit size in areas with good transit access. This would provide more housing opportunities for New Yorkers who want to live alone but do not have that option today. We currently force too many people who want to live alone to find roommates and occupy family-sized units in many parts of the city. Enabling more small and shared apartments can relieve some of that pressure. Finally, previous developments often took place under tower in the park style regulations called height factor. Although DCP has developed a more recent set of regulations for contextual buildings that have height limits, some sites, like NYCHA campuses, cannot access those new rules. The proposed changes would allow height-limited infill on sites that would otherwise be forced to develop tall, skinny buildings or nothing at all. To conclude, this text amendment aims to create a little more housing everywhere so that each neighborhood does its part to address our housing needs, and a few neighborhoods don't feel the intense pressure they do today. But it's not just about more housing, it's about more types of housing. Multifamily, where it's not currently allowed because of exclusionary zoning, homes of different sizes to meet different people's needs, and, crucially, far more affordable and supportive housing. We are very eager to hear everyone's feedback and comments on this proposal, especially ways that you think it could be improved. This slide shows resources we have for the public to read and review, and you can find them by going to our website, nyc.gov/yeshousingopportunity. You can also find more information, including recordings of previous info sessions, as well as other ways to stay informed. For those who would like to provide feedback tonight, we have a checklist that we passed around that will help you communicate your thoughts and concerns. If there wasn't one on your desk or on your chair when you came in, Dante has a bunch. There are also a bunch up here at the front table. Please take one and we will ask you to fill it out. You can either return the hard copies to us tonight, or you can submit them when the community board sends us your full recommendation package next month. The planning department and planning commission really do read and consider these forms. For our last City of Yes text amendment, economic opportunity, several suggestions from the public and this board were added to the initiative during the review phase and made it into the version that just passed out of city council committees. The next steps are as follows. Until late June or early July, we'll be going out to every community board in the city to discuss this text amendment. City Planning Commission will then take it back up in July. We're hoping to have City Council vote on it by the end of the year. Thanks again for your attention, and we look forward to your questions and comments.
Okay, thank you so much. Nicola, are you ready to present?
I think we need to let people ask a few.
Okay, why don't we go ahead and take some questions from the audience. Is the sign-up sheet here? Dante?
I got some lists on the list.
I mean,
Just make sure, because some people came in after, if anyone needs to sign up.
Okay, yes, so if you'd like to ask a question or make a comment, please sign up, I'll send this around.
first to ignore because we joined with the signage.
Okay, so who's,
Okay.
so this is not people who signed up to ask questions? Oh, you do have a question. Okay, so we'll start with Tom Thomas then, followed by, okay.
Do you have any guesses as to, there's several strategies described. If, let's say, 50% of the opportunities were sought, how many units do you think that would produce?
Gotcha. Thanks for the question. So there's a extremely big and broad environmental review. In conjunction with these proposals, there's a very big and broad environmental review. It's probably the biggest environmental review that we've ever done. And it estimates a range of possible numbers of units. That range is from about 58,000 on the low end to about 110,000 on the high end citywide.
Hold on, 58 to 110?
Yeah, very close to that, if not exactly. What that translates to is about 0.7 units per acre over 15 years. So the environmental review underscores two things for me. One is that these proposals really do have the potential to create enough housing to make a meaningful dent in the housing shortage. On the other hand, it really is not expected to result in a ton of housing in any one place. It's not a neighborhood rezoning. It's not 8,000 units in Gowanus. What we've done, we went neighborhood type by neighborhood type, and we tried to create different proposals that work with existing neighborhoods. Often, like with Town Center, looking to New York City's past, to types of buildings that have worked really well, 2, 3, 4 stories of residential above a commercial ground floor, and just bring them back. Re-legalize them in opportune locations around the city. And so that's why I really, I've been in city planning 10 years. That's why I really love these proposals, is because it makes a meaningful dent in the housing shortage while also being utterly respectful of the point of view, people who care, primarily about the character of their neighborhoods, wanting the neighborhoods to remain the neighborhoods that they bought housing in or that they've been living in for a number of decades. And I have to say, I've also been really gratified to see people who have historically been extremely skeptical of what city planning does. Groups like Municipal Art Society or Historic District Council, you know, who typically fight back against things that city planning does. Say, you know what? We've been asking for city planning to take a comprehensive look citywide. We've been asking city planning to be respectful of, you know, the character of our neighborhoods. And people recognize that that's, for the first time ever, we're looking at the full range of New York City neighborhoods and doing a little bit everywhere.
So let me follow up with, of these units. Understandably, the strategies will apply variably to the many community boards. Do the estimates include a look at each community board to see which strategies are applicable?
Yes, so if you look at the environmental review, and we're happy to follow up and send you, it's 1,000 pages or something like that, so we can send you the particular sections. We estimate ranges of units for every neighborhood tabulation area. For folks who are not familiar with that term, neighborhood tabulation areas are even smaller than community districts. They nest within community districts, and so you can aggregate those to get a sense of what the range in particular community districts like this one would be.
Okay, and the last question is one that you can answer. I've seen worldwide population projections which include a precipitous drop. Assuming you've done population projections for the city over a longer period of time, what were your conclusions in that area? Are we straight lining up, or are we leveling off, or are we dropping down in your estimation?
It's another great question. My office is next to the director of our population division, which handles all the census data for New York City and participates in the national census as well. Word is, we had a dip in population during the COVID pandemic, during the worst of the COVID pandemic, I should say. We, at the absolute trough, we were 600,000 people down from where we were. Those trends have reversed, and we're now seeing population growth again. So we predict that we'll resume to pre-pandemic trends, although things can happen. It's very dicey to try to predict beyond 5-10 years, but right now, the conclusion of our population division is that we're returning to pre-pandemic growth. One additional complication, I'm head of the housing division, one additional complication for the housing market is people are now demanding more space in the work from home era. So you used to have a 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom that had 2 or 3 people in it, and now you often see one of those bedrooms being converted into a home office. And so if people need more housing, we need to build more housing to keep up with that as well. And so even when the population was dipping, we still saw incredible pressure on the housing market in most parts of the city.
If your, let's say, modest projections for how successful these strategies will be reaches the end of its line, are there any, what's the second round of strategies look like?
Well, zoning is forever. The environmental review looks at the next 15 years, but as you know, a lot of the zoning in Community District 9 is from 1961. So
God.
if we make these changes to the zoning, they will remain in place and will continue to produce beyond the 15-year period analyzed as part of the environmental review. Of course, city planning is always looking, planning, changing things, sometimes at a neighborhood level, sometimes citywide, in order to address those things as they arise. But these proposals, we think, are built for the next number of decades.
Okay, so this is stage one of several possible stages.
This is, it's a citywide attempt to fix a lot of issues with our zoning that have prevented housing from being built in a range of neighborhoods. Are we gonna get everything completely right, such that we never have to touch the zoning again? Of course not. But it's hard to say right now what other follow-up actions we'll need to do before, external events can assert themselves and we have to respond.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Nicola. We have some slides, we'll get to those. The challenge that I've had and that many people in my block association and in my neighborhood have had is that we are an R6 zone and we are 2-family houses. So the buildable space is already, we're underdeveloped, right? We're under the allowable envelope. Now you're looking at like a 30% increase now with UAP. That is going to generate more of an incentive to destroy and rebuild. It's gonna put more market pressure in our neighborhood. So when you say, we're looking, we want to preserve and conserve our neighborhoods, we don't see that. We're already a neighborhood, Prospect Lefferts Garden as well, for the areas that aren't under historic zones. We're feeling the pressure of development, and we've given a lot to the city already in terms of development. UAP, to me, continues to target the communities of color primarily that were not downzoned under Bloomberg. So those areas, and I don't see how that has been fixed with this plan. A town center is not going to address the affordable housing crisis that we're facing. The only thing that came to address that is UAP, which is still targeted to the areas of color, because we were not downzoned, so we're still considered the medium to high density communities, although many of our blocks are 1 and 2 family homes. So how are we supposed to feel safe and feel that this is a benefit to our community? We see ourselves as being targeted, and we see that this is about to destroy our neighborhood. That's how we're feeling.
No, thanks. Those are extremely important points. And I want to say that we recognize that Community District 9, many parts of it anyway, are under immense pressures. And it's I think of it as like the center of Central Brooklyn, which is one of the parts of the city that's been under the most immense pressures under the status quo. So Community District 9, you get it from the low density areas where you can't build anything there. And so as population grows, or as people need to look for housing there and they can't find it, they come here. You get it from the higher density parts of the city, from wealthier parts of the city that are more centrally located and have been better than Community District 9 at getting rezonings to protect them from additional development.
No, we tried. It's not that they were better. We were not allowed to.
I didn't mean that as a knock on you at all,
Okay.
but they got zoning changes and you have not.
And that was not by accident.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm agreeing with you. I'm
And it was
basically-
done by DCP.
I'm basically, agreeing with you completely. So this community district, one of the reasons why I'm here tonight is because it's a neighborhood that is very special in that regard. It's under immense pressure and under the status quo. It's one of the neighborhoods that I would say, bears a disproportionate burden under the status quo. And when areas are facing the types of pressure that you describe, it's important to remember that what happens in this community district is a function of what happens in the other 58. And when the wealthier, more centrally located parts of the city have been really good at getting what they want out of the land use process, and when the lower density parts of the city have been really good at getting what they want out of the land use process, that leaves you guys stuck in the middle. So, the fundamental goal of this whole enterprise is to take pressure off of parts of northern Manhattan, Harlem and parts north, for instance, under immense pressure from the fact that Upper East Side and Upper West Side don't build any housing. So where are you gonna go? You're gonna go north. And it's gonna lead to pressures that you guys recognize very well in this neighborhood. Same here. You're gonna keep coming east, east, east. Crown Heights is, Bed-Stuy. Now PLG, it's like those are synonymous with gentrification and displacement pressures. And so when we talk about enabling more housing, the most important, the most crucial parts of the city to do that are the wealthier areas, like the Upper East Side, Upper West Side, like the village, the villages, like parts of Brooklyn that have been really good at preventing development as well. It puts all the pressure on you. And so that's just context.
Right, so what is being done as part of City of Yes for Housing to address that gap? Because I don't see it with with these dwelling units in the backyard and being able to.
It's increasing,
elevate
it's the
your-
opposite of
your
what you said.
basement.
Exactly.
That's not going to address the issue.
So if your neighborhood, like I said, we've seen some housing production here, you've definitely felt the pressure.
Some.
There are other parts of the city that are actually shrinking. They've been so good at putting the clamp down
But
that
that's
they
them.
are
That's not
actually.
us, we're talking about us.
Yes.
You keep
Talk
talking
about
them,
us.
Talk about us.
Yeah, be
We're-
specific
you're
about us.
increasing
That's
our
the thing,
density.
that's the thing, I recognize the
You're
tendency.
making it worse for us.
No community
Progressively
district
worse.
is an island. And if you care about these pressures that you are facing in this community district, you also have to think a little bit about what's going on beyond it.
Like
And I would
Rudolph
say-
does,
We already
like
did.
Rudolph does that.
Okay.
Like
I would
Rudolph
say-
does that.
When
I would
look
say-
at the R6, there's an R6B, right? R6B exists in parts of, Prospect Heights, Windsor Terrace.
Thank you.
They don't have the dramatic, bump that we're getting.
I got
as
you,
an
I
R6.
got you.
Why is that?
Right.
Okay,
so you're
let's get there,
talking-
let's get there. But first, I just wanna close with that bit, the context bit, by saying,
We
the best
understand.
defense is a good offense, all right? The best defense, if you
Don't-
fill,
don't do that.
if
Don't
you
do
fill
that.
out these worksheets and you say, we want City of Yes for housing opportunity to apply in every other community district except ours, cause we've had
No.
enough.
We're not
that
saying
would make
that,
sense.
we're saying
That-
spread the love evenly, that's what we're
Exactly,
supposed to be
exactly.
But you
happening.
have
So-
not done that.
So R
And
six,
that is not what this
R6.
proposal is.
R6,
Mhm.
note that any additional floor area at all, if you're able to do more than you can do today, it's for 100% affordable housing at 60% AMI. So there's no way that developments are gonna be able to hit that 3.9 AIRS FAR unless they're 100% affordable. And
No,
if
because
the-
we're only a two-story building, so we can go up another 4 market rate and then add a few. I mean, it's
And
just
you're
putting
giving
more
them
pressure for
Right.
somebody to.
I'm saying, you
tear
asked
down
about
and
what
rebuild.
additional pressure is housing opportunity gonna put on those R6s? I'm saying that anything more you can get is money losing floor area. And so we will not see dramatic redevelopment or anything like that.
That's not what's happening in real time, it's not like, that is not.
I understand, the status quo is horrible for your neighborhood. I understand that
And you're
completely.
increasing the density.
And you're putting more pressure, it's gonna be worse.
Exactly.
And
You're
it's horrible
increasing
now.
the density, you're increasing
Horrible.
the
Any increase in R6 is for exclusively affordable housing. And you can say that.
And you
Some
keep
people-
saying the affordable housing, but that also includes the MIH program, that also has option, workforce
And when
option,
you
that
say
has
affordable
141,000.
When you say
Come on
affordable
now.
housing,
Affordable.
that's not low-income housing.
That's
It's-
right.
okay.
It's the AMI, right?
Right.
Like George
Guys,
said, so we're talking about,
I mean,
we're
it's
talking
not
about here.
affordable, the term sounds good,
Right.
Yeah.
but it's later.
Well, let me tell you what it means.
No, we already
We
know.
know what it means.
No.
We're here because we know what it
Let's
means.
be clear, son.
Guys,
No,
guys.
We know.
Really,
This
really, it's gotta
this
stop.
proposal,
It's gotta stop.
so
Offended.
I come and I present and people they wanna talk about 130% AMI units. That's not affordable.
We know
These-
that, but it's an option underneath the
the-
MIH that they can choose.
No, MIH has nothing to do with this proposal. We are not
Oh,
mapping
really? I
MIH
just saw it, I
anywhere
just
in
saw it,
this.
but you
But
gave
sir,
them extra 20
So
cents.
what, you gotta ask, what AMIs are you proposing to create affordable housing
Someone's
at?
trying to get in at the back.
Today, our zoning programs are at 80% AMI and only 80% AMI.
No, that's.
AMIs
not
have
universal.
changed so much in recent years that 80% for a family of 3 is now over $100,000. We are driving that down under these programs. If you wanna qualify to do anything more than you can do today, an average of 60% AMI. An average, that means that people can produce units at a range of incomes. We
They never
expect from
go lower.
30% to 90%. A 30% AMI unit is $1,000 for a two-bedroom, a brand
But they
new
never
two-bedroom
do that.
apartment. And that's what we are bringing to you.
No, you're not
It's-
bringing
It's
that.
Sir,
actually
sir,
been,
you know what,
We're not.
that
We
sounds
got
good in theory.
It never
and,
happens.
On the coattails of what Nicola was saying, we always get the inequitable end of the stick,
Thank you.
always. It doesn't fail, and I'm not telling you and your colleague anything that you don't know.
Yeah, the status quo is, like I said, I agree with you completely,
the
status quo is
has not
horrible
changed.
for the neighborhood.
Oh,
So-
really? Really?
We-
And who
we
created
know
that?
this. People have been studying this. People have been going to court over this. Come on now.
The
Gotta
housing
give us
shortage,
something
the
better.
housing shortage hits this neighborhood harder than almost any other neighborhood in the city.
And
It
we're one of
does.
the neighborhoods that has more housing than any other neighborhood in the city.
Thank you.
More
We're the
affordable
densest
housing.
populated
Before de
area
Blasio
in the
got
city,
into office.
in Brooklyn.
And he literally bastardized our neighborhood.
Guys,
Am I next? Can I ask a question?
John Wolfling is next after Nicola Cox, followed by Teresa Westerdahl, followed by Alicia Boyd, followed by Carolyn Jenkins, followed by Janine Jenkins.
Good evening. So my name is John Wolfling. Some of you may know that I'm an architect. I've been working on affordable housing for over 10 years. So I
See how well
know,
we've been doing with it.
I'd like to think that this group can be respectful of our guests and of ourselves, so I'm gonna keep my commentary to my notes. So I think our neighborhood is under an existential threat. So is our whole city. Some of you in this room may think that existential threat is to the fabric of our neighborhood, but I think there's actually something more important, which is a lack of affordability. And this problem is decades in the making. It's on the presentation. If you look at any other data, you can see that our housing production is going down. And to not do anything is to perpetuate what we've been doing for the past decades. It's going to cause the current trends to continue. We've got tens of thousands of families in homeless shelters. We've got less and less affordability in the city. We've seen people leaving the city because they can't afford to live here. And it's all because of we are doing things the way we've been doing them for decades. These trends are going to continue. I think this proposal is trying to do something different from what we have been doing for the last 50 years, and to make a fundamental change to how we can have more affordable housing, we can have a more equitable city. And I think to not do anything, to go back to city planning and say, no, we don't want this, we don't want any of this, is a mistake. It's a mistake to not try to change something in our.
I don't think anyone's saying, no, we don't want it. We're just
That's
saying
what I'm
make it a
hearing
little
from
more
this group.
equitable.
That's what
But
I'm
right
hearing.
now, Bay Ridge is not
I
getting.
didn't hear anything like that from this
Guys,
group.
we
That's
don't
a
have the
problem.
process.
Speaking for us.
Low density areas are not taking the hit that we're taking as a medium density area. And we've already been taking the hit for the last few decades.
So I think what would be really productive.
That's
and
the problem.
I have listened to, I've been part of the City of Yes subcommittee meetings, I've listened to the Euler Land Use Committee meetings, and I have not heard, and, you know, maybe I've been deaf to it, maybe I've been selectively hearing things. I haven't heard any discussions that is in support of any of these measures. I've heard a lot of hard no's. I've heard a lot of things like, no, this isn't gonna change. It just, I'm not hearing a productive discussion, a recognition of the problem that we have, this existential threat that we have in our city about affordability, about having fair and equitable city. I'm just not hearing it from this group.
Well, and
Point of personal interest here. How long you been in the neighborhood?
24 years.
All right.
That went up.
Majority of us in here have been here for over
That's
40,
when it was 15.
all right? Yeah, over 40. I got 59, hold on, I'm not finished yet, sir. All right? What kind of architect are you?
I'm an architect that does affordable housing.
Boom.
Thank you, and how much affordable housing have we gotten here in our community?
That's it.
Every apartment that has
I'd like
been
to say one thing
affordable
about
has
your
gone
time in the
up.
neighborhood. Yes, you've got more time in this neighborhood than I do, but I don't think that should be used to discredit anybody's opinion in
And
this
it's
room.
not
No,
happening.
time in the neighborhood means
Yeah,
something.
white people always
But that
say
means
it
you
like
have-
that.
You
that
always-
means-
But it always comes out like that.
You have neighborhood equity.
Yeah, you have it, yeah, it's always
You have
about
neighborhood
that.
equity. We were here when this was a community. It's become a
You came
neighborhood.
to us.
Then it's rested ahead, and now we're trying to get it back to a community. And
Teresa
what they're saying is
Westerdahl
really
is next.
going along with their nonsense. And we're
Teresa
not happy.
Westerdahl is next.
Thank you. Nicola. and
Dion, please
Jonathan.
sign up to speak.
Hello, my name's Teresa Westerdahl. I'm a newbie in the neighborhood. I've lived here for 19 years. I'm a homeowner. I live nearby on Sullivan. I am equally under pressure, as Nicola spoke, having a two-family house. We are subject to constant pressure from developers. We've had a lot of deed theft and people losing their homes, and it's pretty sad. The rents are going up astronomically in the last, since I've been a homeowner and time that I be a landlord. It's frightening what's happening. You know, people are black and brown people are being forced out of the neighborhood, right, by a considerable measure. I want to bring up, everybody here is going to speak similar to what I'm going to say, but I'm going to add something else. I want to focus on the parking and the bikes and what's happening in real time with that is the buildings that are being built. We have like maybe 3,000, I would say, housing coming forth right now. We have development all around us, and it's not being done in a manner that is being overseen properly. DOB is not on it. They're constantly breaking laws and rules and regulations, and it's like you have to have a master's degree in what's happening out there too. And they expect us to report every little thing, and they are hot. If you come near their site and report them, you are targeted. It's dangerous to report any discrepancy like that. And the parking needs to be increased actually in all these developments. We need to have micro parking for bikes, for the little scooters, for any kind of EV, not have it taken away. We need more. If you walk down by Ebbets Field right now, you will see they have a lot of parking, they have a lot of fence, they have grass. They are stuffed to the gills with little motorcycles and everything that they don't have room for. None of these new developments are making a plan to have room for scooters, room for bikes, room for EVs, room for little you know, the EVs. We need all of that. You know, people need that. People are aging in our community. They need their little car to go somewhere. I need my car if I need to go to the hospital, the doctors. I'm like, you know, 70 years old, say soon, and where do I need to go? I'm gonna ride my bike? I don't think so. It's so dangerous to ride a bike now. I have a bike, I love to ride it, but it's too dangerous, it's not safe. And we have winter here, we have rainstorms. People have large families, and you're leaving these families and people out of this equation and focusing on one small group that this housing and this development is gonna be for. You're building right to the sidewalk with no bike rack, no setback, no outdoor space. It just creates this feeling of oppression, and it's harmful. And you need more parking. You need room for the bike racks on the sidewalk. People need to park and drive, and this is a way of the city, and it's gonna continue. And if you don't give it to us, you're taking it away, and guess who's gonna have it? The wealthy people are gonna take over with their cars and their vehicles, and it's gonna be like, not fair. So that's my part.
Okay, that's good feedback. Listen, we knew that the parking piece in particular is gonna be part of a dynamic conversation over the course of public review. We went out big, we said, all right, let's eliminate parking requirements for new housing like other jurisdictions have done. You know, other jurisdictions have done it. That doesn't mean that people don't provide parking, but you know, we recognize that people will have concerns, and we fully expect to hear about them and consider them deeply, what to do about it over the course of public review. So that is good feedback.
What jurisdictions are you referring to?
Many, like Buffalo, New York, eliminated parking requirements for new housing. Many places in California, I believe Texas, Oregon, Seattle. We have a whole report on it. We can forward it to you if you want to. We looked into other jurisdictions. And I just want to say one more thing. We are not eliminating parking requirements for existing housing. We don't want landlords to be able to kick tenants out of parking spaces or anything like that. If you want to do that, you got to go through a public review process. And so we're not, you know, doing that retroactively. Next, I hear you completely on the rising rents. I hear you completely on homeowners getting door knocked like 5 times a week by people who are trying to like buy their places at best, sometimes trying to like scam people out of their homes.
They are conning.
Exactly. No, this is it's
happening.
not city planning's jurisdiction, but it is on city halls and the deputy mayor's radar that this is something that we have to address and take care of as part of these initiatives. We recognize that. We want to do more to protect homeowners and things like that. But I do want to say that those issues that you're describing, these things that have dramatically changed the nature of this neighborhood over the last few decades, it's all driven by that housing shortage. It's driven by people coming it's coming from other parts of the city. They can't afford neighborhoods, they can't afford housing there. And they come farther and farther out looking for housing.
Driven by money.
We know what's happened to Bed-Stuy, we know what's happened to Crown Heights, we know what's happened to DLG. If more housing gets built,
No, it's driven by speculation.
everywhere in the city, it takes the pressure off of neighborhoods that bear the brunt of the status quo like
By,
this.
by
So what
increasing
is the city doing about those landlords that are warehousing apartments illegally and deregulating them illegally that are rented from?
The most recent housing vacancy survey found that we are at the lowest vacancy rate since
But it's
nineteen
false.
No, we're
sixty-eight.
talking about the warehousing. There's
Warehousing.
100,000 units.
I'm
of-
telling you,
Okay,
people
can I-
love to
can
talk
I-
about that
can I
warehousing.
ask-
Every-
can we just-
Every unit is important.
Illegally.
Every unit is important to get them back online, get people in those units. If we got every vacant unit back online, we would still need hundreds of thousands of units to address the fundamental housing
Well, let's
shortage.
start
So
somewhere.
I agree with you completely. Yeah, no,
There's over 60,000
every unit counts, and we wanna get every unit back online. It's part of the both and everything, all of the above solution that we need to get out of the housing
Why is
crisis.
not that part of the proposal?
It's not a city planning thing. Back to the slide that George showed about like the different things that city agencies have jurisdiction for, but I talk to HPD every day. This is an issue that's very much on our radar. It's just one small part of what needs to be a broader solution. We need 500,000 units. Getting those 30,000 units back online would be great, but it's just the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah, speaking personally, if I could like snap my fingers and bring a vacancy tax into existence, I absolutely would. And that's just not something that our agency is responsible for, but we talk, it would have to happen at a certain point at the state level as well. But we're talking to people constantly about like how to take the apartments that are vacant and bring them back online.
But
because
the proposal is also talking about giving building owners tax incentives.
The state level tax incentive for mixed income multifamily is a really powerful engine for this proposal too, and it can help us build a lot of
When
housing.
they're screwing tenants out of the apartment.
That's really
Guys,
tough to do.
Alicia actually has the floor. Are you
You
finished?
know, I would like to go back to those slides because you never did give the information that I requested. So let's go back so we can understand exactly what you're trying to do. Now, you said the town center zoning, right? And you identified what would be the town center zoning in our neighborhood?
So town center zoning would be low density zoning districts, that's R1 through R5, with a commercial overlay on top.
And where are those located in our community?
There are a few on Rogers, and then the rest are on Kingston, Utica, Troy, and I think.
And what would be
Albany.
the increase in those neighborhoods?
I believe we have a slide at the very end.
You said that, but I didn't see the slide.
I think we're gonna flip to it now. So this, what you see here is how the town center proposal would change FAR and height in these districts.
Okay, so what would be the height on an R5? R5, not an R5.
55 feet, you could get 55 feet, that is 4 stories of residential above a commercial ground
So
floor.
right now you have, currently is 35.
No, it's 40 right now.
It says 36. Where is it?
Maximum 40. Maximum height
Okay.
from 40
So,
to 55.
and you went to 55.
Yes.
Okay.
That's
So
just
right,
One story.
so, okay. So now you have buildings that are 2 and 3 stories. Because you have buildings on R5 that are not built to 4 stories.
Well,
They're only 2
well, that's the thing.
Well, let me finish. So you have a 2-story building. You're gonna change it to a 5-story building. That means you have now doubled the capacity of that building to be built. Now, where do you think those 3 stories are gonna go? You think that they're gonna build on top of the stories, or they're gonna destroy and rebuild?
So, the thing with our R5 districts is that today, they very often have 6-story buildings in them,
I'm
especially
not
along
talking
commercial
about,
districts.
no, I'm talking about our community. Our community has 2 stories, okay? So if you're gonna talk, I don't wanna hear about somebody else's community. our community has 2 stories.
Some
You're
of the
about to
buildings are 2
increase.
stories, some of them are
And
3,
what-
some of them are 4, some of them are 5, some
I
of them are
wanna
6.
talk about the ones in which you are now going to increase the heights from the current 2-story.
40 feet is the current.
That's right, because there are additional buildable space. And this is the problem with your proposal. Your proposal is to destroy and rebuild. Because we are not built to the maximum. We have 2 and 3 stories on each one of our lots that we can build up to, right? So we already have billable space. You're just now increasing that billable space. So you're incentivizing a destroy and rebuild. Excuse me, let me finish, because once you get past 50%, that means once they can double the stories. So now it's a 2-story, and now they can go to a 5-story, so that means they doubled and more than doubled the stories. It incentivizes them to destroy the building and build the 5-story. Because that's how the market works. I don't know how zoning works. I don't know if you understand the market, but that's how the market. And we've seen that all over the community. We've seen them take the existing buildings. We've seen them destroy them. We see them rebuild them up to their maximum FAR. And now you want to give them more FAR, and you want to incentivize them even more to destroy and rebuild. But you're gonna tell us, oh no, that's not gonna happen. Oh no, we're just gonna increase that FAR, and nobody's gonna come along and destroy that building and build a 5-story building. That also houses so many tenants. So many people live on these blocks. What about them? What about the fact that they're gonna be pushed out of their homes?
So, the types of sites that will redevelop under town center are those 1-story taxpayers along our commercial districts. If you wanna build a 3, 4, 5-story building like we see all over the place today with residential above a commercial ground floor, you can't do it today. You don't have the floor area, you don't have the height and setback, there's no place to put the parking, you can't comply with the yards and everything else. So we are proposing in low-density commercial districts to, yes, in R5, we're going from 40 feet, 4 stories to 5 stories. To, we hope, and we're adjusting floor area, we're adjusting parking, we're adjusting height and setback to bring back this building form that you're absolutely correct. It houses a lot of people in this city. We made it illegal in 1961. We want to bring it back so more people can live in buildings like that. That's the whole point of this
Destroy the
proposal.
building and rebuild.
I would love, if you destroy a 1-story
Okay,
taxpayer
so
and you
can-
build a
can we
5-story
move on?
apartment building,
Can
that
we
would be
move on? Can I
fantastic.
see the
No,
other,
we're
can we see
talking
the other
about
one?
destroying a 3-story building.
Right.
If it has residential in it, it's not gonna get redeveloped. It's
Right,
gonna be a
right,
1-story
right.
taxpayer.
Excuse me, we have something happening right on Eastern Parkway where they're destroying. Esteban, would you tell them about their buildings on Eastern Parkway where they're destroying it to
happening.
rebuild?
Yeah,
Thank you.
they're taking rent-stabilized buildings, using demolition or substantial rehab loophole, and kicking all the tenants out. I don't even know if they're actually gonna rebuild
40
them, but,
years, 50 years.
but yeah, this is happening all along Eastern Parkway.
I know the building, yeah, I know the
It's
building.
buildings.
It's been in the news because
Can
it's
you-
an exceptional
can
building.
you- Right, everything is exceptional. Can you move on to
It's
the
not
next
exceptional, we
slide?
have, the Grand Heights Tenant Union has 12 buildings that are facing the exact same thing, it's not exceptional, it's the norm.
But if you
Now-
look at what this proposal would enable, town center, it is absolutely not the case that it's gonna destroy existing multifamily to just rebuild 3 or 4 stories.
So naive.
So what, so
Completely naive.
We're talking, this is for the 1-story taxpayers. That's what we're talking about.
No, then
Look at the
make
environmental
it
review.
for the 1-story, but you don't. You make it for us, and then you come and tell us how some developer is not gonna sit there and look, okay, I
Listen,
can't.
if you wanna
Wait, I
foreclose
can't, I
every
can't,
possibility
I
to build more
can't.
housing, then this
We
neighborhood will
already
continue
have,
to
we
be
already,
under
so all your proposal is
Lisa,
just
please
proposing,
move to your next
excuse me,
question, and
your
then we have to
proposal
move
is
on.
proposing that we already
housing.
on the,
We need more
wait,
housing in the
excuse
city.
me.
Okay, Alicia,
Excuse
you
me.
can
Your
continue this
proposal, let me
discussion
finish,
with
let me
Mr.
finish,
Manchin
let me
after the
finish,
session.
Let me finish.
We need to move to
Let
the
me
next
finish,
question.
Let me finish.
We need to move to the next question.
Let me finish.
Alicia.
So you're proposing that because we are already under attack, because developers are already in our neighborhood building, that we should sit there and allow even more development to happen, because somehow that 60% AMI is going to somehow house all those people who income is $25,000 and below. Most of the people, you are not even targeting the low market rate housing, the people who need the housing the most. You're not mandating it, you're not stating that it has to be 30% AMI or 20% AMI, because that's the people who need it. The people who need it are the people who you're not targeting. This program is not targeting that. It says 60% AMI. It does not say 20% AMI. If you were saying 20% AMI, then you would be targeting the homeless. Then you would be targeting the seniors. Then you would be targeting people who make under $25,000. You know, people in my neighborhood that make under $25,000 have a 94% chance of finding an apartment. So if they get removed because you have increased the FAR in their neighborhood and incentivized developers to destroy and rebuild, they will be homeless. And
So,
this is what
I can
you
say,
are, this is what you're doing.
I can say unequivocally that these proposals are the biggest proposals for affordable housing in New York City history. We're talking about tens of thousands of units over the next 10 to 15 years.
For us, no, it's the opposite.
At 60%, an average of 60% AMI, that means that you can create units, we fully expect units as low as 30% AMI, that's $1,000
But
for a
they
brand new
never go
2-bedroom
lower.
apartment. And
It's not low enough.
every
And you're
every
not
type,
guaranteeing that.
It's
You're
not
not
enough.
guaranteeing.
every type of lottery unit that's created through these, again, tens of thousands of units, they disproportionately benefit voucher holders who have a hard time finding housing on the open market. We need to create more lottery units for families at these low incomes and for voucher holders. If you cared about
They can do a
affordable
credit check on
housing,
them.
you would be excited about these proposals. We're talking tens of
Because we've
thousands of
seen
units.
your proposals
This is the
and we've
biggest
seen-
proposal for affordable housing in New York City
Right,
history.
right,
And-
right. 20%, and you're gonna incentivize the destroy and rebuild, and you expect for us to be happy with the 20% and not worry about all the people who will be displaced as a result of you destroying and rebuilding. That's what this is. It's a destroy and rebuild model.
Horrible.
But,
We need exemption.
can you explain the transit-oriented development and just tell us exactly what would be the increases there?
Sure, so in order to qualify for this program, a building needs to, or a site needs to meet 3 criteria. It needs to be within a half mile of transit, it needs to be, the lot needs to be more than 5,000 square feet, and it needs to be on the short end of a block or facing a street over 75 feet wide. So what you see here on this map in blue are all of the low-density districts here in Community District 9. This is not a map of every lot, because most of the lots that you see here are like small, narrow row house lots, right, that are mid-block. I believe there's a site on like Troy and President, that's like a vacant lot right now. That's a 7,500 or 10,000 square foot lot that's vacant. That's the sort of lot where you would be able to build a 3 to 5 story modest apartment building, right? Has to be on the short end of a block, has to be more than 5,000 square feet, has to be half a mile or less from transit. It must meet all 3 of those criteria in order to qualify for transit-oriented development.
And what would be the
If I- if I
additional
could
FAR?
actually
I'm just
interject-
trying,
if I
what
could
is the
actually
additional
interject,
FAR
right.
on that?
The same
We
as the
did,
chart.
Alicia,
So
we
how
did
many
do-
additional more stories for that?
It's the same chart we just looked at.
So the additional.
If it's R5, 55 feet.
And if I could just interject, actually, we did do the analysis, and there are not a lot of lots in Community District 9 that are affected by this. It's primarily the single-family district on President Street that homes would get some density from. And as Jordan said, a handful of lots on some of the avenues in the eastern part of the neighborhood, like Troy and maybe Kingston. These are the R4s and the R5s. Really, the vast majority of our district is affected by the universal affordability preference. We do have single-family districts which are affected, but this particular proposal, Jordan is correct, it doesn't affect a lot of lots.
Along President Street, there are some lots like that that have community gardens. Would you be taking away the community gardens?
Is it mid-block? Like,
Most of them are closer to the corner.
And do they have like green thumb status as well?
I don't know if they have green thumb status, but they definitely have a community garden. And they certainly have benches in there, and people are working those gardens, and they go in there and sit down and relax and
We
enjoy.
can take a look. It sounds extremely unlikely since most of those have been protected, but send us the addresses and we'll take a look.
I mean, I think the most concerning site to me, there was a church in that single-family district with a substantial lot, I think it's like almost a 10,000 square foot lot, that is not landmarked and could possibly be redeveloped, but was not a lot of lots to be honest.
In general, town center, the low-density commercial districts, we expect that to be more consequential than TOD, the transit-oriented development, which is, you know, creates a few opportunities, but not on the same scale.
One last question. You were supposed to do a racial impact study.
It's done, it's posted.
Yeah, but when we looked at the racial impact study, you left a lot of the information out because you claimed that, what was that word that they used, Nicola? Like it was a little too overwhelming for you to tabulate the effect that this will happen.
I couldn't talk, the affordability, you know, part of the problem, we know, the extremely low income housing. What will this result in for low income housing? They couldn't provide any affordability numbers.
That's a great question. So, I mean, these changes are we can say that what the affordability will be for like the UAP units, right? These zoning changes are also intended to work hand in glove with HPD programs that create 100% affordable buildings. We can't say with certainty where those are gonna be or what those are gonna be, and so we don't wanna take credit for that. They will, without a doubt, exist. We do tens of thousands of units a year with HPD, but we can't predict exactly where it's gonna be, and so it wouldn't be proper for us to try to put that in a chart.
Right, but it also didn't speak to, you know, like the secondary displacement that we just spoke about. The fact that this is building upon inequities that already existed in the city.
That's a great question. So these proposals emerge directly from where we live, New York City, which is the city's fair housing report that HPD led in 2020. Citywide look. I love where we live, the fair housing report, because one, it shows impediments to fair housing. It tells the story of how we got to where we are in New York City today, which is incredibly diverse city, but very segregated city. And most importantly, chapter 6 talks about goals, strategies, and concrete actions that we as a city can take in order to affirmatively further fair housing is the term of art, the legal term of what we have to be doing here. And I remember we were putting that together, and the racial impact study is an assessment of consistency with where we live. I remember when we put that together, when all the agencies were gathered, and the agencies were asked, like, what are the most meaningful things that your agency can do in order to affirmatively further fair housing? It was like kind of a nice, fun exercise, but I remember thinking this 2020, there's no way that we are ever gonna try to do any of these things. It's politically, it's too difficult to try to, for instance, touch low-density neighborhoods. Every time we've touched low-density neighborhoods since 1961, it's only to make it harder to produce housing there. Every single time, and that's what you're talking about. That kind of thing is what you're talking about. And I cannot believe, here we are 4 years later, and we are actually proposing to enable housing in places like the Upper East Side, Upper West Side that have been good at shutting it down. Enabling housing even in 1 and 2 family districts. You talked about medium density districts. Yeah, we're asking medium density neighborhoods to do a little bit more. If you're in a single family district, and now you have ADU capability, that basically doubles what you can do on that site. So in the missing middle,
Which is destroy and rebuild.
it's an 800 square foot size limited ADU, but single family district, you can only have 1 home there today, and you can add an ADU to a single family home, and that's still okay under these proposals. We're not doing triplexes or quadplexes everywhere, but we are asking low density neighborhoods to do stuff too for the first time in over 6 decades. So if we're talking about fair housing, if we're talking about racial impact studies, go check out where we live. It is, that is the document for all of what we're doing here. It's our lodestar on housing policy, and it lays out our fair housing policy and explains why we're doing what we're doing here. And so those concerns are core to what we're proposing.
It's almost 8:30, we do need to move on. Thank you, Alicia. Carolyn Jenkins is next.
Basically, my questions have already been addressed, concerning parking, concerning, the garden space, and, with one other, I can't recall right now, but it's been addressed already, so I'm gonna pass it on.
Okay, thank you. And, Janine Jenkins? Okay. Esteban Peron?
Janine, yes, I do. I just wanted to know, what is your meaning of affordable? You said that I work for the city, I worked there for years, and I cannot afford to get into these buildings. For example, you have a building, say 100 apartments. I'm eligible for maybe 20 of them. I can show you on Housing Connect, I've been applying for 7 years. I cannot, 7 years. 7 years, my log number is a 41,000, 300,000. So what are you saying affordable and who are these apartments for? So you said a family of 3 making 73,000. What about a single person making that much? I can't get the apartment for $1,000. So I'm in the AMI, however you calculate that, I'm in a little niche where I can probably get like maybe 10, 15 apartments. What happens to me? Luckily, I have a family, I can live with my family, but this is, it's a shame, it's an embarrassing. I've been working for the city for years, and I can't afford to move. And when I did move, I was priced out of my apartment, and luckily I had a family to come back to, a house to go to. But for people who aren't lucky, what happens to them? What happens to people? I've been in New York for all my life. What happens? I can't even work for years for this city and get a place alone. I can't do it. And then they say 5% is for New York City employees. What 5%? I applied, I got accepted one time. I live in Brooklyn. They accepted me in the Bronx about 5 years ago. No, I wasn't doing that. Now I apply anywhere. I just apply, see if I can get in one of these apartments, hear the stories. Oh, I got in, but not me. I don't have 3 kids, I don't have 2 kids, but I make the same amount that they may make. What about us? And I'm not considered wealthy. I'm considered lower middle class. I don't know what I'm considered, but I guess be middle class if a family of 3 is making 73,000. But what about me? What about us? What do we do? And then on Rogers Avenue and Winthrop, it used to be a single family home. They just built condos there. The price is $1 million, over $1 million, over Rogers Avenue. So condo, so not apartments, a condo. So what is that gonna do to the community? What is that gonna do for the housing and the property taxes? What is that gonna do and the parking? You know, I don't wanna ride a bike. I wanna drive. There's no place to park. There, across the street from the house, we had a single family home. Now it's a building. And it's probably like maybe 6 or 7 floors. 6 or 7 floors. Okay, they have about 10 parking spots. What is that doing? There's never any parking. So, and then also I want to address, instead of building all these buildings, how about big grocery stores? You have all of these buildings upon buildings. Build a grocery store. Incentivize Trader Joe's to come inside the community. You know, anything, any kind of grocery store, but we have so many buildings that's coming up. What about grocery stores? I don't want to have to always go on a train and to come up the steps and go downtown and go shopping. Sometimes I want a good grocery store in walking distance of my neighborhood. So, that's what
I would give my right arm for Trader Joe's in this neighborhood. So the city does have a program called the Fresh Program that is designed to incentivize the building of grocery stores in walkable areas on ground floors. And I think 975 Nostrand Avenue, which used to be the Associated.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we had to fight to get that.
Right, and there's going to, no,
Yeah, we fought for that.
No, and we appreciate everything that you all did to fight for that, and there's going to be a grocery store on the ground floor of the new building. Through the Fresh Program. We know that the availability of like high quality grocery stores is something that we need to incentivize more through the zoning code. We have this program, the Fresh Program, that, you know, is doing what we can to solve the problem. We certainly are open to hearing more thoughts on like how we can do that further, because, yeah, I mean, I remember when the Associated at 975 was closed, and it was, right, it's one of the only grocery stores in the area, so making sure that we don't lose those resources is very important.
And parking, like parking, because not everybody wants to ride a bike. I don't want to go on a bike. You know,
on the apartment issue, I hear that from lots of people as well. At work, folks who have applied for lottery, they won, but it's in the Rockaways, they live there for a year or two, it's too far away, they apply again, apply. We absolutely need more units, and we need more affordable units at a broader range of incomes to help get more folks out of your situation. I agree completely, and I see trying to build more of those units is the most direct thing that we can do to try to help you out.
But also a broader range of incomes,
Yes.
not 3 people making that amount,
That's
one
why,
person.
that's why income averaging, that's why I love income averaging so much. The current programs, 80% and only 80%, if you don't earn 79% AMI, you're out of luck. UAP would create units at a range of income so that we can serve more families through the program.
One more thing, I did want to say, have you considered municipal parking? At one time, it was a really great thing to have. Out at the junction, we had municipal parking. Now, I don't know what it's, I guess they're waiting for another high rise.
It's a building.
It's a
Everything is
building?
building.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's, we could use some municipal parking. Because we live near subway station at the corner. People park on the block and they go to work, and there's never any parking.
That's correct.
Never. People won't even come to visit me anymore because they can't park. They have to go for a mile before they could park. If they could consider municipal parking, it would be a great benefit.
Thank you, we'll pass that along to DOT.
More parking.
Sure they will.
Okay, Esteban Haron?
I just have a couple of questions. So who chooses, when you're doing averaging, who chooses what those are gonna be? Like, who chooses what levels, if it's gonna be 30% or 90% or whatever?
It's HPD in conjunction with the developer.
Right, okay.
Typically, it's three income bands is the max you can do. So with our other programs that enable income averaging, we expect 30, 60, 90, and 40, 60, 80.
Ultimately, the developer has to decide that, right? The developer has the.
In conjunction with HPD, depending on.
Right, but they can't do it without the developer, right?
I'm not sure, I'd have to ask HPD about
No,
that.
they can't.
I just know, Esteban, I can say that in our existing zoning programs, MIH, that allow income averaging, we see it, and we see units at a range of incomes.
And how
that's-
successful has the MIH program been?
It's created about 7,000 units of
But
permanent.
how,
It's
how
displaced-
successful has
It's
it been?
displaced black and brown people in every single neighborhood
Thank
that
you.
it's been implemented. In
Every
Inwood,
ne-
in
thank
Jerome
you.
Avenue, East
Thank
New York,
you. Thank
everywhere. It is displaced black and brown people.
Thank
That's
you.
just the reality
Thank
of
you.
it.
That's
Secondly,
I would love to see your data on that.
Oh,
because-
really? You wanna see the
Really?
data? You could just walk into the neighborhood. Why don't you go
Literally.
into Crown Heights North? Why don't you just
I
take a
mean,
walk
I
down Crown
know,
Heights
I
North?
know Crown Heights North and Inwood.
So you talked about that, let me finish.
Before,
Let me finish.
okay, sorry,
Let me
before the
finish.
You don't
rezonings,
need
they were
data.
experiencing
You
some of
just
the
look.
worst displacement
Okay,
pressures.
so-
in the
Oh,
Southern
please.
City.
So you're
Yes.
trying to, so you say that the purpose of the program is to even things out and to make sure that everybody's getting a little bit of housing, but you're not starting from scratch. You're not starting where like every neighborhood is starting from the same point. So the math is never gonna work out because it's always gonna be starting from the point that's already inequitable. So you're just building on the inequity.
Right.
You're not doing any, you're not doing any.
So
we
we
should
should
be
be
removed
removed from it.
You are.
Do you want, do you want a response or no?
In a second.
Okay.
Almost done. Okay. You're very rude, by the way.
Oh, he's been trained.
Yeah, no, I know.
They
I know.
train them. Don't you know they go to
Of
training
course,
school?
I just
Like
know that in
dogs.
this community board, you gotta be quick to get a word in
Oh,
edgewise.
really? Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Right.
because we've done the work and we know what you're
And we
doing
know
and
the
we know
lies that
exactly
you're
what's gonna
saying.
happen. Okay, yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Okay, so, as with everything in this proposal, from the highest levels to individual components, we are either looking to New York City's past for what works, or we're looking to other jurisdictions for what works. One of the things that we're doing for the first time in New York City is something that is comprehensive, that touches every single neighborhood from the lowest density
Yeah, we
neighborhoods to
heard
the
that
highest
already.
density neighborhoods.
We heard
Other
that.
jurisdictions have done this.
We need to be exempted from it, this neighborhood.
Yeah.
Put that in put that in your worksheet. I
Yeah,
recommended that to
yeah.
Nicola. If you wanna address the problems of the status quo, then yes, you absolutely should be supporting more housing in the other 58 communities.
No, we're not saying that.
Because again, the best defense of this neighborhood is a good
You wanna do
offense.
a divide.
We're back to-
We're not gonna do this thing where DCP tries to pit everybody against each other so they
Thank
can
you,
get what
cause
they
they go
want. Like,
into,
we've done that,
they
we've
go
already
into
done that.
Queens
So,
and say, oh
yeah, we've
no,
already
we're
done
gonna
that.
do it for Brooklyn. Don't worry about Queens.
In terms of responding to Esteban's comment, other jurisdictions have done incremental, broad-based upzonings. You know what happens when you enable a little more capacity across the city? Development flows towards the higher income parts of the city where it wants to be, but where existing land use restrictions prevent it. This is your Upper East Side, Upper West Sides. You don't think developers wanna be building on Upper East Side, Upper West Side? Then why are those neighborhoods shrinking? It's because of the zoning. If we lift zoning capacity everywhere, the first place they're gonna go is Soho, the Village, Upper East Side, Upper West Side, these parts of the city where you can't build today. They don't want to build in PLG. They want to build closer into.
Please.
They want to
You
build.
said that- it's incredibly naive to think that the neighborhoods that are already politically connected in a way like you wouldn't be having this conversation right now.
We are trying-
Now, you're not having a conversation
All right,
in
just
Park
stop.
Slopes.
This is not, this
We
is.
did, we were
the
there.
inequity
No, you
is-
did not.
We were
No,
just
you
there
did not.
earlier this week.
You're a liar.
We were there.
You're
earlier
a
this
guest in our community board right now, so stop acting like you're acting so that we can actually get a word in edgewise. Jesus Christ. Okay. This is out of control. Like you are acting like we are all at the same level and that you're somehow gonna like magically make everything even, and it's so naive. You're leaving it to developers to decide what these things are gonna be. So like, I work with landlords and developers all the time, and they are not gonna be like, you're just literally like, trust me, bro, like that's just not how it's gonna work. It does not work that way. This is so naive, and it's like, and you're also asking us, like, these things are gonna, a lot of these things are gonna pass anyway, right? Like, a lot of these buildings could be built through the regular Bueller process. You're asking us to say, all right, we're gonna give up some of our very limited advisory power, just so that they can do it a little bit quicker, just so they have a little bit less of a roadblock. And that's just ludicrous. Like, you're not gonna get anybody to agree to that. You're not gonna be able to get any neighborhood to say, yeah, I would rather have less of a say in what happens in our neighborhood. So like, this whole thing is a farce. It's like, we know what's gonna happen, we know what the city council is doing already. So, we're just here to tell you how we feel about what you're gonna be doing to our neighborhood and what we think you're gonna be responsible for. That's.
I think people.
Out of curiosity, what do you live?
Okay, Ethan Norville.
I live
is
on the Lower
next.
East Side.
Thank you.
I think
And
what people.
I will say that I have, the problems that you are all describing here are incredibly real. I just want to repeat.
Really?
I see this
Wow,
neighborhood
you
as
just
one
validate
of the neighborhoods that's under the most pressure of anywhere in the
So,
city.
and so,
I will
so
say
then we should have
that,
increases.
read where we live, the problems of this neighborhood are driven by the fact that there is not enough housing, and it puts neighborhoods
No, it's
like this
not.
under immense
No, it's
pressure.
not.
And so we absolutely want to help. We have most, the core concerns around gentrifying
No, you
and
don't. You
neighborhoods
don't
that are
care about
facing
us.
displacement pressures.
don't care
And
about
we, that is why we are doing these proposals.
So phase it in. If you know we're already under pressure, don't give us more pressure. Ease our pressure by, spreading the love to other communities that haven't felt it.
If you have,
Ease it up a little, and then maybe we'll be ready.
if you have ideas
We've heard
for
that.
how this could be phased in, like, please write.
And you can't come up with that. So when you looked at all of the neighborhoods and you saw the ones that were down zoned, and you said, we're only gonna allow 20%, but all the neighborhoods that were not down zoned, we're gonna allow 60% increase based upon whatever. You didn't see the inequity of that. You didn't see that the neighborhoods that are already currently protected, that already have down zoning, that are already protected, you only gave them a little bit of increase. And then the neighborhoods who did not have any protection, that are already facing development pressures, you gave us even more increase. And you didn't see anything wrong with that. And you want to come to us and say you're trying to do what? Level the playing field? How can you level the playing field? You're actually, even in this program, it's racist. It's a racist
Thank you.
program.
Absolutely.
Thank
It's
you.
racist. It targets black and brown communities that were never down zoned underneath Bloomberg, okay? And now you come back to us with another program that increases our heights way past what the white communities and the affluent communities currently have. And now you want to come to us and say, oh, but just agree to it. Just have all the increase. Oh, it's gonna be okay. They're not gonna want your neighborhood. They're gonna go now to Park Slopes because they can get 20% increase. They're not going to Park Slopes.
Because it's all landmarks.
Thank you. My God.
And you know
give
what?
them 20% and it doesn't mean shit to
And if you
them.
furthermore want to help us, how about you help them get people into the buildings that are already there? Because none of them are more than 50% occupied.
Thank you.
None of them.
That's right.
Not
Push for
one.
legislation.
You go back 15 years to the one that's across the street from the old Associated. Right there on Sullivan and Nostrand Avenue, just 2 blocks down.
And they're not
less
going-
than 40% occupied.
And they're not
It's been
going-
there for 15 years.
And they're not going to Park Slope because the city council person of Park Slope will not allow that to go down
Thank
in his
you.
district.
Thank
And
you.
they-
They don't
not
care
let
about
it
the
happen.
20%
Thank you,
increase, cause they know it's never
Because our
gonna
elected
fucking happen.
officials, too many of them are taking money for special programs or their campaign, and they don't fight for us.
That's
So we gotta
right.
fight for ourselves.
And so you wanna come in there and tell us what?
Did you get that in your research? Did you get that in your research?
You wanna come and tell us what? Oh, and this one lives in a protected.
The fundamental,
Let's not
the fundamental
forget
message
that.
here is
We
we need more housing to
landlords.
take pressure off of this neighborhood, and that's exactly what we're trying to do here.
Yeah,
But
right.
it's doing
Well,
the
then help those
opposite.
landlords get some tenants in their buildings that are already existing in our neighborhood.
Like
If
downtown
you wanna help.
Brooklyn.
I'm here.
And what,
But don't bring us to Okie doke, we already know what that is.
I think the problem that exists with this proposal and many other proposals that's gone through this office is that the city of New York doesn't get together and really looking at the problem from a fundamental issue, which is you have to fix the problems that are already there
Yes.
before you start building more buildings. Because you don't even know exactly why you're building these buildings, other than for money.
Take a look at
That's it,
where we
though.
live.
We live in a
Honestly,
no, we're not where we live.
Take a look at where we
That's
live.
it.
No,
Where we live, like you're acting like we haven't seen the
Ethan
data.
has the floor, folks.
So fast.
Well,
We have a lot of
ridiculous.
people
Where
have
we
signed
live.
up to ask questions and it's 8:45. Please let Ethan have the floor.
Yeah, to be clear, a lot of us are seeing some holes in these plans where there seems to be a big focus on units and people housed, and almost no focus on housing those based on who need it the most, based on the people who already live there and might be displaced. So it's basically a net loss for many people who already have a place to live and don't make enough to, join the market. And we're saying this when developers, we pretty much have seen they're gonna behave in ways to maximize their profit. So they're not gonna build for 20% AMI without any kind of incentive or push.
Yes, that's right.
And it looks like no one took it into consideration here. It looks like no one figured that out. And my other comment or question is on the parking. It looks like people were working in silos because there is already citywide and borough-wide efforts to take parking off-street, right? And in this program, it seems like there's efforts to take parking away from being off-street. So essentially, it'll be nowhere, which means we're gonna end up with, certain corners being daylighted, certain areas of the city having less parking. And basically, some parts of the city are saying, move it off-street, which is understandable. And in this program, it looks like that's not gonna be an option either. For one, what options are being proposed for where parking is gonna go?
And it increases segregation when you do that.
Parking will still, so not one parking space would be removed under this proposal in existing buildings. And in future, right, and in future buildings, people will build as much parking as they think is required.
Developers, no.
There was just a building
That's
that went
up
up
to
on
them.
Parkside, I think, don't remember the exact address, but somewhere in this district on Parkside, that I think had roughly double the number of required parking spaces, right? So a certain number of parking spaces were required, and the developer built about double that, right? And that's something that happens on a pretty regular basis, that people will build, developers will build more parking spaces. So,
More parking so people could use it for the park, so you can make more money.
Thank you.
So I'll follow up
Thank
with
you.
something. So someone somewhere decided to let developers just fully decide how much parking they'll put. Okay, I think that was a bad idea. I think we've learned not to trust developers based on what they want. It needs to be a cooperation. But my follow-up question here is, why did no one consider maybe scaling down the parking mandates? Because we understand that, adding one apartment could make them have to make 6 more parking spaces. Why couldn't someone just create a better scale? So it might be a percentage of the units having parking as opposed to having one apartment trigger a 6-space increase. It's not difficult to do.
right, the way it works right now is that if you build more than 10 units, 50% of all units require a parking space. And under 10 units, you waive out of the parking requirement. That's why the 1 unit triggered. But the way it works right now is that, that's the example we gave where the 1 unit triggered several parking spaces. Normally, the way it works is if you build more than 10 units, 50% of all market rate units require a parking space. And
I can hop in there too. We did consider that. It was definitely on the table. It's not where we ended up in the proposal, but it might be where we end up at the end of the process.
And what about the bikes? Like, where are all these bikes and micro devices gonna go? There's no place for them. These new buildings come up and there's all the bikes, there's no rack in the street,
Yeah,
there's nowhere for
under
them.
these proposals,
They're not
we're-
supposed to park on the DOT flagpole. Where are they gonna go?
this is in the weeds a little bit. We're not affecting, bike parking requirements for buildings, so those will remain. And we're also
Micro
extending.
devices, not just bikes, like all of
Right, right,
them,
right.
scooters, everything.
We're also extending a 5% floor area exemption for amenity spaces that can include parking for those types of facilities, so we are incentivizing those as part of this proposal.
People in the neighborhood.
I'm just curious to know, does Department of City Planning take into account how this is gonna affect the other resources in our neighborhood?
Oh, yeah.
Our-
Yeah, I mean-
Our schools.
Oh, yeah. The environmental
our
review.
Hospitals.
The environmental review is the biggest one we've ever done. We're working with all the sister agencies on it, from parks
You
to school
haven't
construction
finished.
authority, to DOT, to DEP about water and sewer, of course. And you know, it's been encouraging because those agencies are seeing this as an opportunity to take a look at, portfolio-wide, at the types of investments that they need to make in the years ahead to address where growth is projected. So this has been a very useful exercise for them as well.
The post office needs parking, the fire department needs parking, the police department needs parking, they're all on the sidewalk causing, everybody's like, it's overly congested, and no room's being made for that.
I think it is an exercise instead of sitting there demanding that there'll be upgrades. You're just exercising. You're just saying, oh, really? Right, we wanna bring 100,000 more apartments into the community, but we don't wanna support the infrastructure. You have so much development going on right now. We have so much development happening in our community and not one upgrade. There's been no upgrade to our sewer systems, there's been no upgrade to.
Streets collapsing.
Thank you, we've got nothing. Every rezoning that you have done for our community has completely ignored the fact that there are 3 or 4 or 5 more buildings added to our community. You refuse to do a cumulative impact analysis so that we could get support for our sewer system. Every time a developer builds next to my house or near my house floods.
Yes,
Okay.
that's what's happening with me
That's
too.
right. You never sit there and mandate that there be any infrastructure support, but now you're going to do a citywide upzoning with no infrastructure support. It's talking about we're doing this for exercise. Yes, I exercise too. I go to the gym, I exercise, but no, I don't plan sewer. But you don't plan sewer either. There's nothing stating that you're going to increase this service and that service and this service and that service when you decide to build a little bit more in every community.
Zoning without planning.
Zoning without planning. It's just
I can say-
residential. It's just residential. There's
I can
no
say that the
comprehensive.
agency that we work with most closely over the course of environmental review is DEP on water and sewer infrastructure. I can tell you DEP can dictate to city planning when we're not, maybe the administration wants to rezone a particular part of the city. DEP says, no, we don't have the sewer capacity right now until we do X billion dollars of improvement in 2040, and we listen to them. So
You're out of compliance right now.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? You're out of compliance right now in our
We
community.
just had a
What are
street
you
collapse on
talking
Bedford
about?
Avenue.
What are you talking about?
Yes.
On Bedford Avenue and Empire Boulevard, right by that construction.
And Empire
Firestone.
collapsed in front of McDonald's as well,
Thank you.
Empire in Washington.
You're already out
All
of compliance. You've been out
And
of
they're gonna
compliance
collapse
for the last
again, they're
15
starting
years.
to cave in right now again in another spot.
DCP is not gonna come, you know that they're gonna come back and say, oh, no, we're not gonna support the city of Yes because you need infrastructure. They're controlled by the mayor, just like you're controlled by the mayor.
Alright.
Don't come here and tell us this
Sydney,
nonsense.
do you wanna ask a question now?
Jim, what's your expertise?
I'm the head of the housing division.
Housing and
So,
sir?
I work in the Brooklyn office. I'm the liaison for this community district and Community District 8.
Okay, so now when we speak of infrastructure, you're saying that it's been spoken of, but what has actually been done?
We have a draft environmental impact statement that looks at the potential impacts of these initiatives across the full range of impact
Let me
categories.
stop you there. You're looking at impact. What is actually being done is what I'm asking.
That happens during the process between the draft and final environmental impact statement where we.
And how long ago was that put in?
The draft environmental impact statement was released in April, and the final will probably come out by the end of the year.
April of this year.
The end of this year.
But this
So-
development has been going on for several years.
Exactly.
No, it just entered public review in.
No,
in
he's
early
talking
May.
about all the development that has been happening in our community. What infrastructure support have you been giving to our community through the rezonings that you have been approving, creating and approving, and more are online coming, okay? What has happened in our community? Where is the infrastructure support? Have you initiated any infrastructure support in our community with the rezonings that you have approved that have increased density in our
And you want us
neighborhood?
to trust you to do it now, just
I mean,
tell
I
me
can
now.
only speak to the proposal that we're here to discuss.
Well, I don't know why
tonight. I
not.
don't know if George has
Well,
more information.
well, go ahead, go ahead.
That's only a proposal.
Yeah, this is just a proposal, it's not
But
enacted
It's work
yet.
that's already been done, and we're still talking about proposals now.
In the
And
midst
work
of
has already been
happening
done.
now, no.
So my question again would be, what type of support are we going to get regarding all of the work that's already been previously done that we obviously need?
All I can say is, because this is, yes, an administration priority, that provides community members, council members with a lot of leverage to get things in order to.
Is anyone from city council here?
No.
No.
Never.
And that's.
They don't really show up.
Never not.
I mean, honestly, this is what community
They
boards
were
are for.
invited.
Oh,
This is what community boards are for.
Please, we asked for
But
this
again,
all through those
if
rezonings,
we're
we didn't get
sending off
anything.
to you, who's going to speak to several other people before it gets to them, and then we don't hear from city council, then it's not purposeful at all.
I mean, as soon as I leave tonight, I'm reporting to my boss, and it goes upward from there to the deputy mayor.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah,
you know,
right.
the feedback that we get here is important, and like Jordan said, we do discuss it at the highest levels of city government.
Okay, now, the developers that come in, who grants them the land that they get to use to build these properties?
They just have to buy it, typically it's privately owned land.
It's all bought, it's all purchased, nothing city granted?
You know, back in the eighties and
Yes,
nineties.
yes,
No,
yes.
Megger,
Back in the
Mega-
eighties and
no,
nineties.
Mega Evans,
Let 'em
Mega
answer.
Evans,
Major Owens.
Major
So-
Owens.
Back in the eighties and nineties, the city came into ownership of tons and tons of property through things like
Okay,
tax
but now we're
foreclosure,
talking
TINRAM.
about 2000, 2000.
Right.
Are
A
they
lot of
using
that-
city-owned land is the question, period. Any part of it, whether it's a.
Yes,
a
we
square
still have
foot
city-owned
or-
land,
or
we have
no.
city-owned land, but it's much less than we did,
Doesn't matter how,
back
how
in the 80s
little
and
a
90s.
house or how
Okay,
large.
sorry,
If they-
I'm
if
trying to
they're
answer your
using
question.
city land, then why isn't it more emphasis put on affordable housing? If you're gonna
When we
use
use city-owned land, it's almost always for 100% affordable.
Oh my I'm done. You got it. Fuck that stuff.
I can say in the project that I work with-
How could you say that to us? That is
Please,
so-
stop,
Here's
stop.
the thing.
I can say every project that I work with,
You're a
and city-owned
liar,
land.
you're a liar, pants on fire.
Please be respectful.
No, he needs to be respectful and don't come into our community and lie to us and say things like that. It's bad enough he's saying that the population is increasing and has no data to support it.
That was our understanding as well, that if it's a city-owned land, that if a
Do you
developer
wanna
puts
ask about a
dollar-
particular project, sir, so that I
But
can?
that was
No,
not,
no, no,
that did not happen at the
Oh,
Major
you
Owens
question.
Armory. And that one block, a whole city block,
Could have been 100%.
market rate housing, and I think we got 20% somewhat affordable, but affordable at like 100.
Excuse me, okay, now, we got the Utica Crescent process, property, right? Apparently, is that state-owned land?
That's right, yes.
So,
Sorry.
so my question to you is going to be, how much of that is affordable housing?
100%.
It's 100%
Yes.
affordable housing?
I think it's a mix of AMIs.
And it's 12 stories,
Off the
correct?
top of my head, I don't remember, but I can find out. and get back to
And
you.
it's 12 stories, correct?
I think that's right. It's been a year since that project went before the
And
city
where
planning commission. so I
did
don't
they
remember
get the
exactly.
criteria to go up 12 stories for that particular project?
What do you mean, where did they get the criteria?
There's nothing 12 stories on that immediate block, so my question would be, how far in that district did they have to go to find something that high to use it as a blueprint or a mark for their?
So with a project like that that's state funded, first of all, projects like that are state funded and developed by the Empire State Development, which is the state's development authority, don't have to go through the city land use process. They can go run. So that's one thing. The other thing is, I don't know, like, what's the tallest building within a certain.
Understood.
Right.
Okay, so now that you've answered that question, we can move on to something else.
Okay.
Well, okay, let me ask,
I-
this might be helpful to you. In an R6 district, which is just across the street from where Utica Crescent is, it's another Vital Brooklyn site. Under City of Yes, under the R6 zoning, what is the maximum height that building could be?
Which building?
95 if they build affordable housing.
Which lot is
Which
that?
we assume they would.
Which lot?
This is the Kingsbrook
Okay.
Jewish.
Mhm.
So it could be 10 stories under City of Yes.
9, yeah.
And what would be the maximum density?
3.9 under.
Okay, versus today, the maximum density would be what?
Well, it is 3.9 for affordable senior housing only. Other types of housing, I'd have to look to see what the zoning is. I don't know if it's an inclusionary area.
I believe it's at 2.43. It's not, it's
that
a
would make
narrow
sense.
street, it's not inclusionary zoning.
It is a narrow street.
So,
There's that property
It
on
is
the
a narrow
corner
street.
of Midwood and Utica, the Walgreens, are they looking to develop that property in any aspect of, building?
Which, sorry, where did you say?
The Midwood and Utica, the Walgreens that's
The
there.
Walgreens property.
The Walgreens
Midwood and
property.
Utica.
Rutland, Midwood, Utica.
Yeah.
Right across from
Eventually,
Utica
across the
Crescent
street
Drive.
from Utica.
Right, I know where you, so.
Is that a commercial?
There are several developments as part of the Vital Brooklyn Initiative
11.
Not one.
that are being.
11?
11.
I think Vital Brooklyn is 3 sites, maybe you're thinking of the number of buildings.
Right, the
Okay.
number of buildings.
Right.
But that's not part of the site, that's just a,
The question is, are they looking to
Commercial
develop
space at-
that site? Question.
they know that.
Not to my knowledge, but let me confirm and get back to you. And you said it's where the Walgreens is?
Yes,
Right, it
Midwood,
was, the
Utica,
closest.
and Rutland.
Midwood, Utica, and Rutland,
Yes.
the Walgreens.
It's
Yes.
right across from
Make sure
the
you get
Utica
this card,
Crescent
because they never get back to you.
project.
I don't, they don't give us cards.
So how-
They
how
do
they
give you
correspond?
cards, do not lie.
So how am I gonna correspond with?
I'll give you my email.
That's good.
I have tons of your cards.
Okay, but now,
In my drawer, I keep them.
when we talk about lotteries, what's the criteria for how they pick the lottery?
It's,
The developers.
it's a lottery, like it's.
Now, why couldn't it be a list as opposed to a lottery? If you qualify to go on the list, why not just make it a list? And therefore, as you get to the person's name on the list, you cross them off and give them an apartment.
There are so many people on the list. that
Well,
it would be- right.
that would be a more fair assessment, because you tell somebody they win a lotto, and that doesn't really resonate.
So,
Nobody
right, the need
oversees
is,
the
the
lottery.
need,
We
the
don't know-
need
we
is
don't
so
know
great
who's
that
watching
there's
that.
no, like, there's no, it's either a lotto or a list, there's like no fair way to.
But why
just
should
because
there
the
be
need
a
is-
lottery if it's 100% affordable housing?
It's not.
So the point is, there are more people interested in those units than there are units to rent out.
So
And
why
it's-
don't the people who actually live in the neighborhood get preferential
And they're
treatment?
So
changing that now.
right, it used to
Because
be.
Very unfortunate.
Right, the city just settled a lawsuit that is going to take, it used to be, I think, that 50% of those spots were reserved for community residents.
Okay.
It's now 20.
It's 20,
It's going down to
down to
15
15,
in
because
2029.
the city settled a
Yeah.
lawsuit with some people who
Okay,
sued.
question answered,
Right.
understood. Now, you said these are, you're looking to do a 10,000 to 15,000 units? They're looking to develop in the area?
In this area?
Yes.
No, we're talking, these proposals that we are talking about tonight, I don't know if you're
I
here for
heard
the
the number
proposals.
10,000. Where'd that come from and what's it pertain to?
I'm not sure, but we are proposing about 100,000 units citywide, which would be about 0.7 units per acre
Okay, can we drop
over
back to
15
this
years.
neighborhood? How
Yeah.
many units are you
A
proposing?
typical block in this
This
neighborhood is like, I think, about 3 to 4 acres. So we would be talking about 2 to 3 units per block over the course of 15 years.
2 to 3 units per block?
On
Yes.
average, so you might have a 100-unit building or whatever.
So in
You might have an
total,
80.
That- You believe
In-
that?
in
That doesn't
total-
even make sense.
in
That doesn't
total,
even make
what are
sense.
you?
Think about the math
Alicia, in
Think about the
total,
math
let
of that.
John
You're gonna
answer, in
double
total, how
the-
many units are you looking for from
This is why
this
they're lying.
district?
Right, I don't know,
Based on what he gave us, what's that,
I
what's
mean,
that add up to?
just, you know, you've talked a lot about, the need for equity, I know Where We Live was very focused on that. You're looking for 100,000 units citywide, there's 59 community districts.
Right.
What do you think is an equitable number for each district?
We can show you the graph, I don't know if it's in the appendix here, but we can show you the number of units projected for each neighborhood tabulation area across the city, and it shows 4 different colors, from
Okay.
least to most per, and if we don't have that, I'm sorry, but we can send it to you to consider.
Do you know what that is?
off the top of my
for
head,
us?
I mean, I know the number that I have in mind memorized because I looked at the size, like the typical size of a block in this neighborhood is 2 to 3 units on average per block.
So going
In
upon-
like a block in community district, not
But
specific.
if you take that math and you add up that 3 units per block, how many blocks are you looking to put units on?
I would need to,
I mean,
Right.
just, you know, going back to, I understand you did a particular analysis based on the zoning framework you chose, but in terms of equity, what do you think is equitable? Because, you know, the zoning framework isn't really a framework for equity, it's just saying we're increasing zoning for every district, right? So going back to what you think is an equitable framework,
Right.
what would you think is
so
an equitable?
the way that we're trying to be equitable here, and I understand many people here have expressed their disagreement with this framework, or they're not convinced it will work. But the sort of the equity goal here was to take the neighborhoods throughout the city that have been very good at blocking housing, either because they're affluent, or because they're farther out, or they are politically connected, or for whatever reason, they've been very good at blocking housing, right? To come up with a citywide framework that will require the neighborhoods that have not been building housing to do their fair share in order to take pressure off of the neighborhoods like this one, or Crown Heights, or Upper Manhattan that have been bearing the brunt.
So what are you defining as fair share? Because this is a question that's come up consistently in our.
So you know that city council, have you seen the legislation that
I
they
have,
implemented? That
yes.
includes a report that will actually attempt to answer that question.
So you're not defining fair share?
The approach that we are taking, like Jordan says, is to, for the first time in New York City's history, say every neighborhood has to be part of this.
And I agree, and I think that.
And what we're seeing as well,
We're gonna phase it
in our projection, what we're seeing as well is it's actually some of the lower density neighborhoods that produce little or no housing today that will see the biggest bump under these proposals. We also see bigger bumps in wealthier parts of the city that are not producing housing today.
gonna see.
Okay, so you are familiar with the numbers then of what different areas are expected to produce. So just roughly, our district, since you came here tonight to talk to us.
Exactly. What's the number?
I don't have the number offhand, we can follow up and show you the map.
So you just wanna put housing here, but not know how many units that you need?
We wanna put housing everywhere, the other 58 community districts as well. We understand the
But
pressures
again,
that this
when
community
you
district is
ask
under.
us to say yes or no to something, why wouldn't you have all the information?
Thank you. They've been
I
doing
mean,
this
you're
for
asking us
2.5
to buy
years.
something without a price
That's
tag.
like driving, buying a car without driving.
I came here with the fundamental number, which is 0.7 units per acre over 15 years. And, it's not going to change the character, it's not going to overtax the infrastructure.
Let me
needs
stop,
in
let me
neighborhoods.
stop you.
No,
If you're saying
thank you,
with
because it would be
this
destroy and
particular
rebuild.
program, you're talking about 0.7 units.
Per acre, over
Per
15
acre,
years.
over 15 years. When we've had approximately 12 times that,
Thank you.
over half an acre.
Exactly.
For the
Thank
last
you.
10 years.
Thank you,
secret
thank
sauce-
you. And so, and
The secret-
adding more to that, now all of a sudden
So
we're gonna get less.
basically-
The secret sauce to these proposals is the geography. Again,
So
for the
what
first time, we're going
I got you.
citywide.
We already heard that, we already
Then you
heard
go in
that.
citywide.
we should be exempt.
Exactly.
Thank you,
Exactly.
thank you,
For those
thank you,
neighborhoods who have bear the brunt
Exempt.
Thank
of all
you.
this housing, we
thank
shouldn't
you.
even be considered for
Thank
income
you.
housing.
We should be
Right.
completely out of it. We've already made
That's
our
legitimate feedback,
contribution.
we've heard it from other parts of the city too.
We've
If
already
that's your
made
feedback,
contributions.
then give
Do the
it
math,
to us.
it's simple mathematics.
Right.
If you count the number of units that are in, let's just say, I'll give you the one block. I give you, Empire, Bedford, what's the street before the McDonald's right there? Washington, not the street. McKeever.
McKeever, thank
Going
you.
up to, let's say, Montgomery.
Yes, right.
Montgomery. How many units are on that square block, that block right there?
10,000.
Between Everett Field and the property that they're building that was there with the.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. How many units are they expecting to put on where the Firestone unit was? 15?
No, we showed the map, we showed the map of housing
Yeah,
production by
15,000.
community district. If we could put that
My
back up
question,
there.
my question is, that one area,
Qualify.
you're looking at about what,
Yeah.
30,000 people?
And that's what's allowed
And,
today.
and no infrastructure. No, it was not allowed, it was a rezoning, excuse me, that happened.
Yes,
It was an
rezoning, one area
R6A.
that was height protected.
Thank you. R6A that did not allow that type of density. You, DCP, approved the program, thought it was a great
The
program,
knife in our
said, oh, we're gonna
neighbor's
have affordable housing, and now we got people coming in at 100% affordable housing, where you have to make $115,000.
Exactly, it's not for the people
You
in the
are
neighborhood.
correct,
It's
you are
not for
correct.
us.
Rezonings, zoning map changes, which is not included here, tend to be more significant increases in density than anything we're proposing here. We agree with you completely about the 130% units. Again, I could not agree with you more about the ridiculousness of 130% AMI
And yet,
affordable
this
units.
is what you proposed
And we're
to us.
coming to you
And
with
you'll
an
be
average
coming to us
60%.
again in September,
Less than half
telling
of
us the same thing.
130% is what we're bringing. This is the biggest set of proposals for affordable housing in city
And it's
history.
only about increasing
It could
housing, it's not about anything else. It's nothing, this is not planning. Did you go to school? Because I know that the school teaches you
No
that
vision.
planning is about paying attention to your infrastructure.
Exactly.
Planning is
Exactly.
talking about
Because
looking
you've
at your
taken
neighborhood
three
and deciding
hospitals.
how, thank you,
But you're adding 10,000 more people.
thank you.
Exactly.
Okay.
We're losing
Exactly.
another hospital, but you're
So-
adding 10,000 more people.
Exactly.
So
That
I
doesn't make any
have,
sense.
I have an answer for you all. Community Board 9 is 1.6 square miles according to the census. So that equates to 1,024 acres. So we're talking about 716 units per year over the next 10
No,
years.
over 15 years, over 15
Over
years.
15
We're-
years.
But if you add 900
So if
units,
we're talking about,
Right,
so
700.
guys, if we're talking about
if you add
700,
900, you're over the map.
if we're talking about 700 units per year over 15 years, that is 10,000.
No, it's 700 over 15 years.
Over
700
700 a
Do
year.
you really expect us to?
700 total over 15
Okay.
years.
Then you might as well leave now. Back up and leave now, no more development, we got our 700 this year.
Thank you,
Yeah,
thank you, thank you, and you're trying
done.
to propose a new
Leave
rezoning
now.
that's gonna have
We have our 700
1,000.
now. We have our
Oh,
700
you
right
haven't
now.
seen it?
There's
You
no
don't
reason for
know
you to
the
be here.
Empire Boulevard rezoning proposal that is sitting on your desk?
The
799?
So 700 units.
Empire Boulevard.
Can I ask you a
Plus
question?
the Franklin Avenue,
we
you
can-
got 2 rezonings in that same neighborhood
Right,
that you
right,
are
right.
considering, that will bring another, what,
So-
2,000 units into our community,
So
3,000 units?
700
And you want us
units.
to now approve another 700?
It's not 2,000 units, but.
Oh, really? So what is it, with the 2 rezonings?
But then how many of them are affordable?
Okay, so John, that's very good
No,
information.
100.
What you want from us is 700 units per year.
700 over 15 years.
Over 15 years, so 700 units over 15 years, we have about 4,000 houses. If, let's say, 15% of us decide to do basement units, that's 700 units.
Thank
So
you.
why the UAP, these R6 and R7 zones cover 2/3 or 3/4 of our community? Why have any UAP at all if the target can be met by basement units? Lots of people here already
So
have
it's
basement
not,
housing.
it's not a target, it is what we expect the proposal to result in.
So it sounds like a target.
So I'd like to
If
push.
you want, if you want
so I'd like
targets,
to push
we
back
gotta
on-
wait for the speakers for
So
housing.
I'd like to
Right.
push back on the idea that the UAP will only lead to 700 units in 15 years.
That doesn't make
Okay,
That doesn't
we
even make
crunched,
sense.
we downloaded the city data from Pluto, we crunched the numbers, and, we left out things like landmark districts and schools and other lots that aren't going to be developed. We even left out the hospital lot, since we know Vital Brooklyn's already coming, all right? And based on on that, we think that with the UAP zoning, we would get close to 50,000 units.
Thank
And
you.
that is we have 43,000 units currently.
My
So that means, we're talking about doubling the number
More
of
than
units in this
double.
community.
Yeah, well, 60%
More than
increase,
doubling the
what do
number
you
of
get?
units in our community,
7%,
okay?
17%.
We're talking about 5,000 buildings being demolished, because we know that
5,000?
developers will demolish
Yes.
when they
Yes.
can build 3 times the size of the building that is already there.
Not
There was
one
an
school.
article in The Real Deal saying that developers are looking at development lots as being, acceptable if they're trading at $200 to $260 per buildable square foot. Almost every home in our community that's not landmarked and not in a single-family district, that sits in an R6 or an R7 district, falls into that category. The only ones that maybe are borderline are the most expensive homes in the community, the ones that are trading for $2.5 or $3 million. Maybe those won't be demolished. Somebody will just put a really nasty, 3-story addition on top. We've all seen them. We know it happens, right? And, the same thing is gonna happen in these wealthy communities where you say that suddenly all the development is gonna flow there. It's optional for the developer to add this affordable housing. They will do it only if it is profitable for them. So when they go into these extremely wealthy communities and you're saying you're giving them a 20% density increase in exchange for 20% affordable housing, they're not gonna do that. We
Thank
already
you.
have the developer for the Spice Factory at Franklin Avenue, which is, one of the prime corners in our neighborhood. We asked him, would you do something like what's under UAP? For a 30% increase in density, would you do 30% affordable housing? And he said no, because I won't be getting additional market rate density. He wants a 200% increase in density. He wants a doubling in height. So either they're not, in the most expensive parts of our community, we would expect, just the continued demolition and luxury condos. And in the parts that are more affordable, where people can still hope, middle-class people can still hope to buy houses, those are gonna be demolished and replaced with big apartment buildings. Yes, there will be some middle-class units, but it'll be mostly luxury units. This is going to completely replace our community. Our community, not just the buildings, but our community.
Exactly.
It's
Destroying
2 to 4 years for
destroying
these
the
buildings
whole
to
city.
go up. They empty them before they rebuild. And that means that all of those people are not gonna have the chance to come back.
That's right.
And that's how you
Suki,
increase
one more thing,
homelessness.
one more thing.
Right, because they,
Suki, like you
this
said,
this is the model
I
that
agree
they've been
very-
under,
I agree
and
very
this is
much
why we
with what
have
you
the
said.
homeless crisis.
Suki,
This
what-
is their model.
Okay, but
Suki, what you said is
Give
very.
additional height and we'll have some affordability.
One more time, Suki, what you said is correct. If there's not additional market rate capacity, it doesn't really incentivize people to do anything like that, like demolish whole neighborhoods. And UAP does not provide any additional
in less
market rate
expensive
capacity.
neighborhoods like ours. We
Thank
are
you.
already seeing it. Just look at the building
Yes,
on the
it's
corner
so
when
nice.
you go out here. That 2-story taxpayer, and again, I'd like to push back on the idea that taxpayers don't matter. There was a store on the bottom, there were people who lived above. It's now been emptied so that the
Yes,
developer
yes.
could put 3 stories on top, and God
Thank you.
knows what it's gonna be. This is what we see happening. Developers empty the buildings, and then they add on top, and you're gonna add even more pressure for that.
And-
We have seen 6-story rent stabilized buildings where the developer threatened to put 7 stories on top of it, because, endangering the tenants, because that zoning already allows it. That right on Washington Avenue, it happened about 5-6 years ago.
And all those people have no light,
And-
no.
and-
Wow.
Right,
Hours.
and now you're giving them even more density,
Yes.
even in the 8A zone. Now they can be demolished, and that's a great way, as Esteban said, to destabilize the building.
And Sophie, don't forget about the developer who said that if he has to do it as of right, he's gonna let it be turned into a shelter.
Oh, that too.
Don't forget about
Well,
that.
let him build a shelter.
right? Because we know that the city
also
pays
have
them a
That's
lot of
the
money
black
for
reference,
that.
CP.
We also
Yeah,
have some landmark
I love it.
transferable development, right, give me a couple of, well, that just reminded me, there,
Landmark
one of the
Oh, we're
proposals
talking
is
about
the
air
air rights,
rights.
it's gonna be a
Yes.
wider range.
For landmarks?
Yes, yeah, you
For the air rights, right?
Yeah.
So since we have the landmark areas that,
It's just for individual landmarks, it's not for historic districts. So if you have individual landmarks that are underbuilt,
which we have
today
plenty
they
of.
notionally have the ability to transfer unused development rights. If they go through a full special permit process, that's, full ULUR,
The
2 years,
proposal-
$200,000.
Mhm.
We propose to facilitate transfers for more landmarks, reduce the amount of procedure to an authorization that goes to the community board and to city planning commission, but it doesn't take a full ULUR. And also to broaden the radius over which you can transfer. Today, you can basically only go next door or across the street. We would say you could go anywhere on the block or across the street from the block. So for instance, I was talking to a landmark church in Crown Heights a couple months back. It's landmarked, its roof's collapsing, they don't have any realistic transfer opportunities today. Under this program, they were ecstatic because they do have realistic transfer opportunities now, and that could enable them to sell their development rights and get money to repair the roof. So that's kind of the thrust there, but it's only
Where
for
are
individual landmarks.
development rights gonna go? Who's the receiving site gonna be?
City
Is
should
it-
just
is it-
give them money to fix their church.
Is it gonna be like somebody's house across the street?
That wouldn't be really a
Exactly.
plausible receiving site. Typically, it would be somebody probably who wants to do multifamily housing.
Right.
Right, and they
anywhere-
want to
anywhere?
do multifamily
So-
housing on our larger home lots, a 50 by 100 lot.
Thank you.
You know, they are knocking down these houses and these become multifamily development sites.
Mhm. And with now the ability to have additional
Air
air
rights.
rights and go
Right.
even higher,
Exactly.
right? Exactly.
Yeah, the whole point of buying development rights is to be able to build a bigger building. If it's a residential building, that would be more housing in addition to support for the landmark. Typically, that's a win-win.
It's a win-win to destroy and rebuild.
Okay,
But see, I still have a
That's
problem
more
with that
right
because
there.
the more you build,
Right,
the
yes.
more you increase homelessness. I take the trains, I've been taking trains all my time.
They've been building.
So I can say from 10 years ago, I didn't see this many homeless people.
That's
You
right.
saw a couple, but now they're like stretched out because I go to work early. They all parked, sleeping all over. I've never seen the amount
That's
of
the
homeless.
housing shortage for
The
you.
housing shortage.
No,
But
no,
you're
no.
actually
That's not a
displacing
shortage.
these people.
That's not a shortage.
I think
They
it's
cannot
displacing. I don't
afford
know
the
how
housing
to
that you
displace
have.
it.
They cannot
You're
afford the
displacing
housing that you
people.
have. That's not a shortage. That's the
I've
housing.
never seen
So
that
back to
many
the-
homeless
Displacing
people on
us
the
from the
trains
beginning.
before. It's
Back to the
Hold
beginning
on.
of the presentation. Sorry.
Here's the thing.
Williamsburg.
Here's the thing, if we're going to bring in more development, the proposal, I would imagine, is infrastructure. Increase the infrastructure before you sit us down and tell us you're gonna put more people. Give us more hospitals, give us more schools, give us more transportation. If you can't do those things, then there's no room for the people that you wanna bring in.
No, agreed.
And remember,
Agreed.
it'll
You
be
need
But you don't have
double
it.
the
You don't
number
have
And
it.
then
that
make
we
sure
have
more units
today.
are affordable.
Remember, it'll be
Like what I
double
was
the
saying,
number
if
of
there's
people we
100
have.
apartments,
Exactly.
about 20 is affordable.
So if
So
you're
then
gonna-
about 300,000 people apply. Because I can tell you on Housing Connect, how many people apply. So if you have 20, okay, so for my income, say 20 or 30, something like that. But then for other people, they have a family of 4 making $50,000. Okay, you may have another 20 or 30, but it's still not enough to compete with the amount of people, lower income, who
Thank
needs
you.
housing.
Right.
And these apartment buildings are not for them. It's not for us. If you're asking me as a city worker, I don't make $140-something thousand, but I don't. So that's not for me. I can't apply for that. But then if you're making 75 or 80, okay, I have to have 4 people. Well, no, I don't. And I don't know how they do it, but whatever. 4 people making that, it's scary because I can't even fit into that category with having 3 kids get into an apartment and I don't make the 141,000. But then you have the other people who are just being displaced and all of them sleep on trains because I go to work at 6:30, so I see this. So all of these people are on the trains and I've never seen this many people that are homeless.
And she's a
Newly
hard
homeless
worker
people.
her whole life.
And we've been
Exactly.
seeing
Hard worker,
development.
and I'm still living in the family.
This idea that you have not been developing in New York City, I don't know where you get that. I was born and raised in Brooklyn, okay? I have never seen the amount of development in this city
Exactly.
in the last decade than ever before. You've been building everywhere, all in our community. We got this development, that development, this development. Do you want to tell us, first, that as the population is decreasing, and it has been decreasing, and there's been no numbers that is increasing, and if you do have those numbers, please pass them to me, okay? As the population has been decreasing, and we lost 600,000 people within the last 5 years. As the population has been increasing, as the buildings have been rising, and yet you want us to believe that you have not been building enough for us, where the population is decreasing, the buildings are going high, and yet people are in the streets. That's because because of speculation, because this proposal is nothing geared towards real estate investment. They want to come into our community and they want to make a profit off our community. You are increasing the fall for them to sit there and incentivize them even more to come in and destroy and rebuild. And when you destroy, you remove even more people who cannot afford who cannot afford another affordable community, because there is no more affordable communities. There's only one more affordable community left in New York City, and that is in East New York, and that's because of Charles Barron.
Yes.
He is the only community that has still affordable housing. And the developers don't want to go there. It's too black. They don't want to be there. They know, you know they want to be here. They want to be here because we are next to the garden, because we're next to the park, because we are the black side of Prospect Park. They want to be here, and you are just going to increase their profitability by increasing our numbers, the fall, to incentivize them to come in and destroy. And you expect us to sit there and say, oh, but what about Queens? Let Queens, no, we're here. And we know that this development proposal is going to just incentivize them even more to come into our neighborhood and destroy and displace. But you don't care about displacement. You want to live in some fantasy land because you can find enough affordable housing. Why don't you become a person who makes $25,000, who lives in an affordable community, and then watch their landlord do everything that they can to remove you? Why don't you be that person? And then you come and tell them, oh, well, you know, I'm so sorry, we were going to create affordable housing, but yeah, I guess you just have to move. Oh, I don't know what you're going to do.
Well, where? Where are they going to go?
Oh, because your program is not saying 20% AMI. There's nothing in it that says that. The developer chooses, just like he always chooses. Even at MIH, you came with us to the MIH. You came with 7 years ago. Oh, we're going to increase housing, but you're going to get affordable housing. We didn't get affordable housing. We watched every development in this community be above market rate that was for the affordable category. Did we not? Every time we saw an affordable unit pop up in our neighborhood, it was above market rate.
Displaced people, that's
And it
neighborhood.
Thank you.
It does. And so it
Drove up the
doesn't help.
prices
So you
all
have
over.
people who are in the neighborhood for years who are bitter. It's not helping us.
No, I hear you. It really sounds like the status quo is not working for this neighborhood.
Status quo. This is not the status quo. This is speculation. This is how developers make money. And you know this is how they make money. They look at communities of color, they sit there and buy up our properties, they speculate, they raise up the prices, and when you sit there and give them more of an incentive to destroy and rebuild, that's exactly what they're going to do.
So a couple of things. Ms. Boyd was just talking about, you know, people being kicked out of their homes and not being able to find a new one. And I'm a rent stabilized tenant, right? A few months ago, when the Supreme Court decided that it was not going to take up a challenge to New York City's rent control laws, that was like one of the happiest days I've had in months, right? Without rent stabilization, I do not know how I could plan for my family's future. And as a department, we do not view housing construction and tenant protections like rent stabilization as being in conflict with one another. We see them as working better together, right? So we are like keeping New York City's rent stabilization and rent control laws strong and healthy so that people who want to remain in their homes can stay there. Like, that is important to me personally, and it is important to all of us as a department, and we do not see that as being like as contradicting our mission at
There's
all.
a reason that doesn't work.
How are you
Because
going-
most of the housing in Park Slope is rent stabilized.
That's not true. Most of the housing in,
A lot of it is rent
most of the
stabilized.
housing in Park Slope, most of the housing in Park Slope is brownstones,
Nope.
right? Brownstones are not rent stabilized.
No, those brownstones, I'm talking about the actual apartments
We
that are
have
in.
5 minutes,
apartment
guys,
buildings.
5
The
minutes.
apartment buildings, I'm not
5
talking about the
minutes.
brownstones, and you can build on a landmark. You just have to keep the facade. Once you keep the facade, you can go up as high as you want, and they can do that in Park Slope just as well.
But they don't. And you did not
And
see
they
any.
also pay half the property taxes that we pay over here.
So now,
No, that's-
so
no,
now,
that's-
You look,
Guys,
if
we have
you look,
five
one
minutes,
second.
let him
If you look
answer.
at Crown Heights,
Yeah, I know,
Bed-Stuy,
I know.
East New York,
Thank you.
Brownsville,
Thank you.
and parts of Red Hook, we're paying twice as much as people are paying in Bergen Beach,
The city's
Back
property,
Bay,
right.
Park Slope,
No.
Bensonhurst.
Why?
with more people.
Totally inequitable.
More people.
That's why when the Supreme Court, I mean, when the High Court here in New York came with the decision a month ago, that
Dion, this is not relevant.
they
Let him-
saw,
let him
they saw
answer.
where the inequities with impacted brown and black neighborhoods, primarily black neighborhoods, I mean, I didn't say brown, black neighborhoods, all right? And it was against federal law,
Right.
so they kicked it back to the law.
The city's property tax laws are completely messed up.
Thank you.
I totally agree.
And now you coming in here with additional.
That's something.
The other thing I was gonna say.
Here's the thing, mathematics.
Okay.
Let's go with mathematics.
Can I finish?
You wanna add another 50,000 people to this area with no more hospitals, no more schools, no better transportation. How's that gonna happen? Over the
Well,
next
you're
50
taking
I
away
don't know,
transportation.
again, I don't know where the
Okay.
50,000 number comes from. You said that was a spreadsheet.
Yeah, we generated
the
the
math.
spreadsheet, and this is based
Send it.
on our analysis
Okay, could you,
of.
I would love, could you send it to me?
Yeah,
I'd love to look at it, yeah.
absolutely, absolutely.
doesn't
And this
work.
is,
It
and,
doesn't
you know,
work.
I mean, just to, you know, basically what is going on, when you add 60% more FAR to a site that is already radically underbuilt,
Thank you.
you are making the
Thank you.
land underneath worth more than our homes. That is an
That's it.
incentive
That's
to
it.
speculate. 60% AMI is not low enough to deter them because our district median income is at 60% of AMI, and the prices of the homes are low enough in almost every part of the district that that extra FAR increase of 60%, which is higher, much higher than in wealthier
It's just
neighborhoods.
60% is money losing floor area, and so that's
It
why
is
it doesn't
not-
incentive.
It is not
doesn't
money,
incentivize
it is not money
It-
losing.
It doesn't make sense
Okay.
to build it.
John, it is not money
Like you
losing
said.
floor area when the buildable price per square foot is well below $200 a square foot. Okay, even if they have to do 60% of AMI, they have enough
We'll take a look at
luxury
your
units.
analysis, okay?
They
And-
have
and
enough
we'll
luxury
follow up
units
on your analysis.
to build.
We'll take
And
a
they
look.
Let her
finish.
No, your point about like the particulars of the R6 narrow district, like leading to a gap that is unusual is like it's a point well taken, and if you could just send me that spreadsheet that you put together, I will take a look at it.
Oh, I will.
And you
We
knew,
have
and you
plenty.
knew that coming in here. You knew that. Did
So-
you not know that?
I
That
will
we,
also say-
we have an R6 and we're not.
No, I knew
Ms.
that that was,
Boyd,
I knew that that was
I
something
will
that-
also say that other neighborhoods that have lots of R6 narrow see this as a plus. They say,
Really?
okay,
What,
we are
17?
willing to accept bigger buildings as long as they are a higher proportion of affordable housing. We have absolutely heard that in other areas.
Really?
I know,
CB17?
no, in CB4, for instance.
So much for it.
Yeah, we've absolutely heard that there
I know Bushwick,
places that are
and
willing
that's
to
just
accept
about
bigger
that.
buildings if they are a higher proportion of affordable. That doesn't mean every neighborhood has to think that way, but because in order to get significantly above the existing market rate FAR, it's 100% affordable, we absolutely do not expect to see a ton of people trying to
Oh,
trip over
please.
themselves to redevelop R6 narrow sites.
They've been doing that
So,
since
I think
17
we're pretty
forever.
much out
Are we
of-
being I was
Yeah, we're
just,
pretty much out of time,
okay,
but.
I'll say one more thing, to the question of like building enough and whether New York City is building a lot, right? There are several ways to measure how much New York City is building compared to other cities. One of them is new buildings per person, right? Where compared to other cities in the US, we are very, very low.
Buildings or units, because we have one building.
Units is what I meant, like new housing units per person. Compared to other metro areas in the United States, New York City is towards the bottom. the city is better than the New York City suburbs, which are like true slackers in this area and really need to be pulling their share as well. But in general, the New York metro area, in terms of new units, new housing units built per person, is towards the bottom. The other one is new housing units per job created. And this is one where in particular, between 2000 and now, New York City has been on a tremendous tear for creating. I mean, we've just been creating jobs like gangbusters for 20, 25 years.
That's why you're cutting services?
And I believe one housing unit has, between 2000 and now, one housing unit has been built for every 4 jobs created in New York City, right? And so it just creates a massive imbalance. So we're not gonna point to a number and say this is enough or this is not enough, but just thinking about the number of jobs that have been created here and how economically successful New York has been in the last 25 years.
How is that a relevant statistic though? I mean, aren't we basically looking at having to house people, not house jobs? Because we could be giving jobs to people who already
Right,
live
but
here.
when a metro,
already
but
live
when an
here,
area is
right?
creating jobs, you have to create, you have to create housing units.
It puts pressure on the housing market.
Okay, but I understand what
But
you're
this is
saying,
a
but what
tri-state
exactly
area.
is the relationship between jobs and the need for
Can I
housing?
pick
Is
this
there,
one
is
up?
there a logical link here?
So
Because
So let's say, let's say,
they do.
Suki, that we add, 100,000 high-paying jobs, 6-figure jobs or whatever. Those people and their families need a place to live.
But what if they already live
They
here?
earn 6 figures. Some of them live here, some of them are coming from outside. They earn 6 figures, they can probably afford a decent rent, and they are looking around for New York City for housing. They are putting additional pressure on the market. Maybe there's a housing unit for them to move into right away, great. Maybe they're coming to PLG and looking for apartments here. Things like that, new jobs and the people that it brings, put pressure on housing markets.
Okay, but if they already live here, either they're not looking for a place to live, or when they move, they're leaving an apartment empty for somebody else, right? So do we know the number of people that are getting these new jobs that already live here? Because I know that in this district, as in many others, employment of locals is important. We don't really care about employing people who come from somewhere else.
I mean, it would be great if it worked that way, but we're talking about additional jobs. So, we have an X number of jobs today. Over the decade, we create 100,000 more jobs.
And we have a high
And so that
unemployment
means
rate in
people
certain
are,
communities.
people
We
are gonna be
want-
coming from outside.
We would like for the unemployment rate in communities like ours to go lower.
This is all true. The fact is, what Jordan said, when you are creating a ton of jobs, it attracts people and it puts pressure
But
on
the
the housing
bottom
market.
line is that's reflected in population increase or decrease, right? Okay, so I'm
It puts
sorry,
pressure on the
I'm
housing
being
market.
kicked out here.
It has human consequences.
what about the
It leads
decrease in
to
population?
It leads to the rising rents. It leads to displacement
okay,
pressures. It leads to homelessness.
Yes.
And, there are
And
real human
upzoning
consequences here.
also increase displacement.
All right, thank you, everybody. Good to be back.
Thank you guys for coming.
Good to be back.
I think
With your dog and pony show. And the lies, 100% affordable housing.
So, you really think it's gonna be, what do you think?
Like square footage.
Yes, there's so.
700 units. I mean, where did they get those numbers from? My God, did they really set